When I was a child, I often looked back on those early years with fondness, filled with love and laughter thanks to my wonderful parents. We didn't have much money or live in a luxurious place, but we had each other, and that was enough. My sister Rachel and I were inseparable, always embarking on little adventures. Our parents would laugh and say it was important for kids to explore the world. Everything changed when I turned 8. One rainy night, while my parents were driving home from work, a truck lost control on the slick road and crashed into their car, killing them instantly. Rachel and I didn't understand why they never came home. Our Aunt Melissa was the one who broke the news, saying, "Your parents had a terrible accident, Burrows. They're gone." Afterward, Melissa decided to take in Rachel, but said she could only manage one child. Rachel, who was quiet and loved reading, was easier for her to handle, while I, being lively and constantly on the move like our parents, was deemed too much. She told me, "I'm sorry, Sylvia, but you'll need to go somewhere else, somewhere better for energetic kids." I couldn't understand why I was being sent away when we were both her nieces. I was placed in an orphanage. The place felt cold and smelled of antiseptic, and I felt like I didn't belong. It seemed as though I was being abandoned, not even wanted by my own aunt. But then something good happened. The Smiths, friends of my parents, learned about my situation and came to take me in. They didn't see me as a troublesome child, but as a girl who had just lost everything. "Why would we not want you, Sylvia?" Mrs. Smith asked gently as they were signing the adoption papers. "You're going to be our daughter now, and we'll make sure you have everything you need." Moving to a new city with the Smiths felt like stepping into a different world. They loved me as their own, never making me feel like an outsider. They supported me through school, cheered for me at soccer games, and were there for every high and low as I adjusted to my new life. Even with their love, I often wondered about Rachel. How was she doing? Was Melissa kind to her? Did she miss me as much as I missed her? But life moved on, and I grew up in a home filled with love and acceptance, slowly healing from my past. That's how my journey started, in a loving home that chose me when my own family had turned me away. One morning, Mrs. Smith noticed I was quiet and asked, "Hey Sylvia, you seem awfully quiet today. What's on your mind?" "It's nothing really," I said, "just thinking a lot about the past lately." I hesitated, unsure how to bring up the box of old letters I had found in the attic. The letters weren't meant for me, but they had told me so much. "Whatever it is, you can tell us," Mr. Smith said, his expression warm and inviting. Taking a deep breath, I decided it was time to share. I found letters from Aunt Melissa to my parents. She talked about taking in Rachel, but not me, saying I was too much like my parents and too wild to fit into her perfect family. The room fell silent for a moment. Mrs. Smith reached over and squeezed my hand. "Oh, Sylvia, that must have been hard to read." "It was," I said, "but it explains a lot. It's why she never came to see me, not even once. I guess I just wasn't the right fit." Mr. Smith said firmly, "Remember, we chose you because you fit perfectly with us, not because you needed to fit a certain mold." I nodded, feeling the weight of years of confusion starting to lift. "I know, and I'm grateful every day, but it still hurts to be rejected for who I am." "We know, sweetheart," Mrs. Smith said with a warm smile. "But remember, you're not that little girl anymore. You're a strong young woman who has overcome so much." "You're right," I said. "I'm going to use this. I'm going to write my thesis on family dynamics and acceptance. Maybe I can help others understand and deal with similar situations." "That sounds like a wonderful idea," Mr. Smith said proudly. "We're so proud of you." The rest of my college years flew by as I focused on my studies and part-time work, driven by a desire to show that being too much can actually mean having a lot to offer. My thesis on family acceptance was well received, opening doors to graduate studies and a promising career in social work. Every success felt like a quiet reply to Aunt Melissa, proving that her rejection didn't define me but pushed me forward. My bond with my adoptive parents grew stronger, and I found comfort in knowing I was loved unconditionally as my career took off. I often thought about those difficult revelations and used them to fuel my passion for helping others. Every client I assisted and every family I saw reconcile felt like healing a small part of myself that had been hurt. Through it all, I kept moving forward, determined to live a life filled with love and acceptance, proving that sometimes being too much is just enough. One crisp afternoon, as I was settling into my office, my phone rang, breaking the quiet. It was an unfamiliar number. "Hello, Sylvia speaking." "This is Nurse Thompson from Greenwood Care Facility," the voice said. "I'm calling about Melissa, your aunt. She's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and her condition has worsened." Hearing Melissa's name after so long surprised me. "I'm sorry to hear that, but there must be some mistake. Melissa and I haven't been in contact for years." "I understand, Sylvia," Nurse Thompson said, but before her memory faded, she insisted we reach out to you if things got worse. Her family hasn't visited in months. I paused, letting her words sink in. "I see. What exactly are you asking of me?" "Just a visit," Nurse Thompson replied. "It might comfort her, even in her current state." I thought about it and felt an old wound reopening. Later, at home, I turned to Jared, my fiancé. We sat on the porch watching the sunset. "Melissa's in a nursing home with Alzheimer's," I explained, unsure how to feel. "They want me to visit her." "Sylvia, you don't owe her anything," Jared said calmly. "Remember, she made her choices." "I know, but it's complicated," I replied. "Part of me feels like I should do something." "Whatever you decide, I'm with you. Just think about what's best for you," Jared encouraged. The next day, I talked to Mr. and Mrs. Smith. "Sylvia, it's okay to protect yourself," Mrs. Smith said warmly. "You have your own life and family now. Melissa made her choices." Mr. Smith added, "It's not your responsibility to fix it." Their words made sense, but I needed more perspective. I called Rachel, hoping to understand her absence in Melissa's life. "Sylvia, I stayed away on purpose," Rachel confessed. "Living with her, even as the favored child, was suffocating. When I left, I decided it was for good." "Did you know about her condition?" I asked. "I did," Rachel said. "But I chose peace. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary for my sanity." Rachel's words hit hard. We had both found our escape from Melissa's controlling shadow. After reflecting on these conversations, I decided to call Nurse Thompson back. "I've given it a lot of thought," I said. "I'm sorry, but I can't visit Melissa. It's a part of my past that I can't revisit. Please understand." "I understand, Sylvia. Thank you for considering it." "We'll respect your decision," Nurse Thompson said before hanging up. A mix of relief and sadness washed over me. Jared held me close, his support unwavering. "You made the right choice for you, Sylvia," he assured me. Leaning into his embrace, I felt the strength of his support. Choosing to move forward on my own terms was one of the hardest but most freeing decisions I had ever made. A few days later, I met Rachel at a cozy little cafe. I was nervous but excited. It had been years since we had sat down together, just the two of us, trying to reconnect after so much time apart. As we sipped our coffee, Rachel broke the silence. "I've missed this, Sylvia. I've missed you." "I've missed you too," I replied. Her words made the familiar pain of our separation ease a bit. "I'm sorry we let so much time pass." "We were both dealing with a lot," Rachel said with a tentative but genuine smile. "But I'm glad we're here now." We started talking about our aunt, and I hesitated before speaking. I heard about Melissa's condition. It must have been tough hearing about it after all these years. Rachel's expression clouded for a moment. "Yeah, it brought up a lot of old feelings, but I realized that staying away was necessary for my own healing. She wanted to shape me into something I wasn't, and when I couldn't fit into that mold, it hurt a lot." I nodded, understanding her more than ever. She had been rejected in one way, and I had been rejected in another, just for being too much like Mom and Dad, too energetic, too lively. "It's ironic," Rachel mused. Rachel and I talked more about our past. She pushed us away, trying to mold us, and now she's the one left alone. I said, "I've decided not to visit her. It's hard, but it's what I need to do to protect my peace." "I hope that's okay." Rachel reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "It's more than okay, Sylvia. I support your decision. We both need to do what's best for us, not just what's expected." We spent the rest of our time together reminiscing about our childhood, the good and the bad, talking openly about our hurt and healing and the lives we reclaimed from Melissa's control. Felt therapeutic. "We have each other," Rachel said as we got ready to leave. "That's what matters. Let's not let anyone come between us again." I smiled, feeling a deep sense of relief and reconnection. "Agreed. It's us against the world, right?" "Right," Rachel echoed with a laugh. As we hugged goodbye, I felt lighter than I had in years. The renewed bond with my sister gave me strength. Driving home, I reflected on our journey, the pain Melissa caused, our personal growth, and our choice to keep our distance. It wasn't about holding grudges, but about choosing our well-being and focusing on a future that was ours, not dictated by the shadows of the past. That night, as I shared everything with Jared, his unwavering support and understanding highlighted the incredible strength I had gained, not just from my chosen family, but also from reconnecting with Rachel. Together, we were moving forward, healing from our scars, and building lives filled with love and purpose. The morning Melissa passed away, a chill settled in the air, not from the weather, but from the finality of the news. Rachel called me early. Her voice was steady but carried a hint of old grief. "It's over, Sylvia. Melissa is gone." As I processed Rachel's words, a mix of relief and sorrow tangled inside me. "Are you okay?" I asked, understanding the complexity of her feelings. "I think so. It's strange, isn't it, to feel relief that it's finally over," Rachel replied. "It is, but it's also okay," I said, feeling the truth of my words deeply. "We've been carrying this burden for too long." We decided to attend the funeral together, not for Melissa, but for ourselves, to close the chapter on our painful past. At the cemetery, the small gathering was a stark reminder of the solitary life Melissa had led in her final years. There were no warm eulogies, only the cold facts of her life and passing. As the pastor finished his prayers, Rachel squeezed my hand. It was a silent pact between us. We were here to say goodbye not just to Melissa, but to the shadow she had cast over our lives. Walking away from the cemetery, I felt like a chapter was finally closing, one that had lingered open for too long. In the weeks that followed, life moved swiftly towards a much happier occasion, my wedding. On the day of the ceremony, in the bridal suite, I was surrounded by the laughter and bustle of my bridesmaids. Rachel was there, radiant and supportive. No longer just my sister, but my best friend. "You look beautiful, Sylvia," she whispered, adjusting my veil. "Thanks to you. I couldn't have gotten here without your support," I replied. Our eyes met in the mirror, reflecting our shared history. The ceremony was everything I had dreamed of and more. Jared stood at the altar, his eyes filled with emotion as I walked toward him. The church was full of our friends and family, every face a reminder of the love and support that had guided me here. As Jared and I exchanged vows, promising to build a future together based on love and respect, I felt the weight of the past truly lift. We were moving forward, doing so on our terms, our lives defined not by past shadows, but by the light of what could be. The reception was a blur of music, dancing, and laughter. Mr. and Mrs. Smith danced every dance, their faces glowing with joy. Rachel gave a toast that brought everyone to tears, not just for its words of love, but for the journey it recounted, a journey of healing and rediscovery. As the night drew to a close, Jared and I stepped outside for a quiet moment. The stars sparkled above us, a tapestry of light against the dark sky. "We did it," I said, resting my head against Jared's shoulder. "We did," he agreed, kissing the top of my head. "Here's to new beginnings, to love, and to a future we create together." As we stood there, the night seemed to whisper around us, promising years of happiness built on the courage to make choices and the strength to let go of the past. The air was no longer heavy with loss but light with the promise of the life we were ready to live. Now that our story has reached its end, I have a question for all of you. Sylvia and Rachel chose to attend Melissa's funeral, not out of obligation, but to find closure on their own terms. Do you think attending the funeral of someone who hurt you is necessary for healing, or is it better to find peace from a distance? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your insights can enrich our discussions and provide support to others facing similar dilemmas. If you found this story moving or thought-provoking, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. We value each like, comment, and subscription as it helps our community grow and allows us to bring you more stories that matter. Thank you for watching. I look forward to reading your responses.
"You can't just up and leave, Marnie. Family is forever." Clara's voice echoed in the kitchen. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. After 25 years of marriage, I thought Jack and I had built a life together, but lately it felt like we were drifting apart. His mother, Clara, had always been a presence in our lives, but her constant interference was taking its toll. "I'm not leaving, Clara," I said, my voice strained. "I just need some space to breathe." Clara scoffed, her eyes narrowing. "Space? What do you need space for? You have a husband who loves you and a family who needs you. What more could you want?" I bit my tongue, knowing that arguing with her was futile. Clara had a way of twisting my words, making me feel like I was the one being unreasonable. I glanced at Jack, hoping for some support, but he remained silent, his eyes fixed on the floor. I have a career, Clara, I said, trying to keep my voice even. I can't just drop everything every time you need something. Clara's face hardened. A career? What good is a career when your family is falling apart? I felt my blood boil. How dare she question my dedication to my family? I had worked hard to build a successful career, and I refused to feel guilty for it. My career is important to me, Clara, I said, my voice rising. And it's important to this family. Without my income, we wouldn't be able to afford the things we have. Clara's eyes flashed with anger. So that's what this is about? Money? You think you're better than us because you make more money than Jack? I shook my head, frustrated. That's not what I meant, and you know it. Jack finally spoke up, his voice quiet. Mom, please. Marnie works hard for this family. We should be grateful for everything she does. Clara sniffed, her eyes filling with tears. I just don't want to see this family fall apart. Is that so wrong? I sighed, feeling the weight of her words. I knew she meant well, but her constant meddling was suffocating. I needed to find a way to set boundaries without tearing our family apart. No one wants this family to fall apart, Clara, I said, my voice softening. But we need to find a way to make this work for everyone. That means respecting each other's needs and boundaries. Clara's shoulders slumped, and for a moment, I thought she might actually listen. But then her eyes hardened again, and she turned to Jack. I hope you know what you're doing, son, she said, her voice cold. Because if you lose her, you'll have no one to blame but yourself. With that, she turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving Jack and me alone in the heavy silence. I turned to him, my heart aching. Jack, we can't go on like this. Something has to change. He nodded, his eyes filled with sadness. I know, Marnie. I'm sorry. I'll talk to her, I promise. But even as he said the words, I knew they were empty. Jack had been promising to talk to his mother for years, but nothing ever changed. I was tired of waiting for him to stand up for me, for us. I looked around the kitchen, at the home we had built together. I loved this place, but lately it felt more like a prison than a sanctuary. I knew I needed to make a change, but the thought of leaving everything I had known for so long was terrifying. But as I looked at Jack, at the man I had once loved so deeply, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't keep living like this, constantly walking on eggshells, afraid to speak my mind. I deserved better, and so did our marriage. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation to come. It wouldn't be easy, but I knew it was necessary. I just hoped that Jack would be willing to fight for us, to stand up to his mother and put our marriage first. Because if he couldn't do that, then I didn't know how much longer I could stay. What do you mean you emptied the savings again? I felt my blood run cold as I stared at Jack, disbelief etched on my face. He shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. Mom needed help with some unexpected expenses. I couldn't just leave her hanging. I took a deep breath, trying to control my rising anger. Jack, we've talked about this. We can't keep bailing your mother out every time she has a financial hiccup. We have our own bills to pay, our own future to plan for. Jack's eyes flashed with defensiveness. She's my mother, Marnie. I can't just turn my back on her. And I'm your wife, I snapped, my voice rising. When are you going to start putting our needs first? He flinched at my words, but I couldn't bring myself to feel guilty. I was tired of always being the one to compromise, to sacrifice my own dreams and desires for the sake of his family. I'm trying, Marnie, he said, his voice strained. But you know how Mom can be. She's been through so much, and she needs our support. I scoffed, shaking my head. Support is one thing, but this is enabling. She's a grown woman. Jack, she needs to learn to stand on her own 2 feet. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I know, but it's not that simple. She's my mother, and I can't just abandon her. I felt my heart sink at his words. It was the same argument we'd been having for years, and nothing ever seemed to change. Jack was so wrapped up in his guilt and his sense of obligation to his mother that he couldn't see how much it was hurting our marriage. I'm not asking you to abandon her, I said, my voice softening. But we need to set some boundaries. We can't keep sacrificing our own financial stability for her sake. Jack nodded, but I could see the reluctance in his eyes. "I'll talk to her, I promise. We'll figure something out." But even as he said the words, I knew they were empty promises. Jack had been saying he would talk to his mother for years, but nothing ever changed. She always found a way to manipulate him, to make him feel guilty for not doing enough. I sighed, feeling the weight of our situation pressing down on me. I loved Jack, but I was starting to wonder how much longer I could keep living like this. I deserved a partner who would put our marriage first, who would stand up for me and for our future together. As if reading my thoughts, Jack reached out and took my hand. "I'm sorry, Marnie. I know I haven't been the best husband lately, but I promise things will get better. We'll work through this together." I wanted to believe him, but a part of me couldn't help but feel skeptical. We'd had this conversation so many times before, and nothing ever seemed to change. But I knew I couldn't give up on our marriage, not yet. I had to keep fighting for what I believed in, for the life I wanted for us. "Okay," I said, squeezing his hand. "But things have to change, Jack. We can't keep going on like this." He nodded, his eyes filled with determination. "I know, and they will. I promise." As we sat there in the kitchen, the weight of our problems hanging heavy in the air, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. I wanted to believe that things would get better, that Jack would finally stand up to his mother and put our marriage first. But a part of me couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a long and difficult road ahead. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the challenges to come. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to fight for my marriage, for the life I wanted for us. And if Jack couldn't see that, if he couldn't find a way to put me first, then I would have to find the strength to do what was best for myself, no matter how painful it might be. "They're moving in here? Without asking?" My voice cracked with disbelief as I stared at Jack, my heart pounding in my chest. He shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. "Mom and Dad need a place to stay. Their house needs some repairs, and I thought it would be nice to have them closer to us." I felt my blood boil. "Nice for who, Jack? Did you even consider how this would affect me, affect our marriage?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know it's not ideal, but they're my parents, Marnie. I can't just turn them away." I shook my head, feeling the weight of his words crushing down on me. I had just returned from a business trip, exhausted and looking forward to some peace and quiet in my own home. Instead, I was greeted with the news that my in-laws were moving in, invading my space, and disrupting my life. "This is my home too, Jack," I said, my voice trembling with anger and frustration. "You can't just make these decisions without consulting me." He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could say anything, the front door burst open, and Clara walked in, followed closely by Harold. "Marnie, dear, you're back!" Clara exclaimed, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Isn't it wonderful that we'll all be living together now?" I forced a smile, trying to hide my true feelings. "It's certainly a surprise, Clara. I had no idea you were planning on moving in." She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, it was all Jack's idea. He's such a good son, always looking out for his family." I glanced at Jack, seeing the guilt and discomfort written all over his face. He knew how much this would upset me, but he had gone ahead with it anyway, putting his parents' needs above our own. As Clara and Harold began to unpack their belongings, I felt my heart sink. This was supposed to be our home, our sanctuary. But now, it felt like a prison, with my in-laws watching my every move and judging my every decision. I tried to keep my composure, but as the days went by, the tension only grew. Clara openly disrespected my space, rearranging my belongings and criticizing my choices. Harold was no better, constantly demanding attention and expecting me to cater to his every need. I found myself retreating to my work, staying late at the office just to avoid going home. But even there, I couldn't escape the stress and anxiety that had taken over my life. One evening, as I sat at my desk, staring blankly at my computer screen, my colleague Sarah walked in. "Marnie, are you okay?" she asked, concern etched on her face. "You've been working late every night this week." I sighed, feeling the weight of my problems crushing down on me. "It's my in-laws," I confessed. "They've moved in with, and it's just been a nightmare." Sarah nodded sympathetically. "I understand. My mother-in-law lived with us for a year after my husband passed away. It was one of the most challenging times of my life." I felt a glimmer of hope at her words. "How did you get through it?" I asked, desperate for any advice or guidance. She smiled sadly. "I had to learn to set boundaries, to stand up for myself and my needs. It wasn't easy, but in the end, it was the only way to preserve my sanity and my sense of self." I nodded, feeling a newfound sense of determination. I knew I couldn't keep living like this, constantly walking on eggshells in my own home. I had to find a way to reclaim my autonomy, to stand up for myself and my marriage. As I drove home that night, I steeled myself for the confrontation that lay ahead. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to fight for my happiness, for the life I wanted for myself and for my marriage. And if Jack couldn't see that, if he couldn't find a way to put our needs first, then I would have to find the strength to do what was best for myself, no matter how painful it might be. "I can't live like this, Jack," I whispered, my hands trembling as I sat across from him at the kitchen table. The house was quiet, but the tension between us was deafening. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know it's been difficult, Marnie, but they're my parents. What do you want me to do?" I felt my frustration boiling over. "I want you to stand up for me, for us. Ever since they moved in, it's been one thing after another. My belongings are being moved around, my routines are disrupted, and your mother constantly undermines me." Jack's eyes flashed with defensiveness. "She's just trying to help, Marnie. She means well." I scoffed, shaking my head. "Means well? She's manipulating you, Jack. Can't you see that? She's always making snide comments about my job, my cooking, even the way I dress. It's like nothing I do is ever good enough for her." He looked down at his hands, avoiding my gaze. "I know she can be difficult, but she's been through a lot. We need to be patient with her." I felt my heart sink at his words. It was the same excuse he always used, the same way he always justified his mother's behavior. I was tired of being patient, tired of being the one who always had to compromise. "Patient?" I asked, my voice rising. "I've been patient for years, Jack. I've put up with her constant interference, her manipulation, her disrespect. But enough is enough. I can't keep living like a stranger in my own home." He looked up at me, his eyes filled with confusion and hurt. "What are you saying, Marnie?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the words I knew I had to say. "I'm saying that if things don't change, if you don't start putting our marriage first, then I don't know how much longer I can do this." His eyes widened, and he reached across the table to take my hand. "Marnie, please, don't say that. I love you and I want to make this work." I pulled my hand away, feeling the weight of my decision pressing down on me. "Then prove it, Jack. Stand up to your mother. Set some boundaries. Show me that you value our marriage as much as I do." He nodded, his eyes filled with determination. "I will, Marnie, I promise. Things will be different from now on." But even as he said the words, I couldn't help but feel a sense of doubt. How many times had he made similar promises in the past, only to fall back into the same old patterns? How many times had I allowed myself to hope, only to be disappointed once again? As the days turned into weeks, the tension in the house only grew. Clara's presence was suffocating, and Harold's constant demands were draining. I found myself dreading coming home each night, knowing that I would be met with another argument, another battle for control of my own life. I tried to talk to Jack to make him see how much his parents' presence was affecting me, but he always found a way to defend them, to make excuses for their behavior. It was like he was blind to the damage they were causing, or worse, like he simply didn't care. One night, after a particularly heated argument, I found myself alone in our bedroom, tears streaming down my face. I knew I couldn't keep living like this, constantly walking on eggshells in my own home. I deserved better, and so did our marriage. As I sat there, my mind racing with thoughts of escape, of starting over, I heard a knock at the door. I wiped my eyes, taking a deep breath before opening it to find Jack standing there, his face etched with concern. "Marnie, I'm sorry," he said, his voice soft. "I know I haven't been the husband you need me to be, but I promise things will be different from now on. I'll talk to my parents, set some boundaries. I'll put our marriage first, no matter what." I wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that he meant what he said. But a part of me couldn't help but wonder if it was too little, too late, if the damage had already been done, and if our marriage was beyond repair. As I looked into his eyes, searching for the truth behind his words, I knew that I had a decision to make. I could either keep fighting for a marriage that seemed to be slipping away, or I could find the strength to walk away, to start over on my own terms. And as much as it pained me to admit it, I knew that the latter might be the only way to save myself, to reclaim the life I had lost. It's either them or me, Jack. My ultimatum hung heavily in the air as I stared at my husband, my heart pounding in my chest. He looked at me, his eyes wide with shock. "What are you saying, Marnie?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the words I knew I had to say. "I'm saying that I can't keep living like this, Jack. Your parents have taken over our lives, and you've let them. You've chosen them over me time and time again, and I can't do it anymore." He shook his head, his voice pleading. "Marnie, please, they're my parents. I can't just turn my back on them." I felt my anger rising, hot tears stinging my eyes. "But you can turn your back on me? On our marriage? Jack, I've tried to be patient, I've tried to understand, but enough is enough. I deserve better than this." He reached for me, but I pulled away, my heart breaking with each step. "I love you, Marnie. Please don't do this." I looked at him, my voice barely above a whisper. "I love you too, Jack, but I love myself more. And right now, I need to do what's best for me." With that, I turned and walked out of the room, my heart heavy with the weight of my decision. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I also knew that I couldn't keep living a lie, pretending that everything was okay when it was far from it. As the days turned into weeks, I threw myself into my work, trying to distract myself from the pain of my crumbling marriage. But even as I put on a brave face, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that Jack was hiding something from me. It wasn't until I stumbled upon a stack of papers in his desk drawer that I realized just how deep his betrayal ran. There, in black and white, were his plans for Clara's long-term care, plans that he had made without my knowledge or consent, plans that would have drained our savings and left me with nothing. I felt my blood run cold as I stared at the papers, my hands shaking with rage and disbelief. How could he do this to me? How could he make such a huge decision without even discussing it with me first? In that moment, I knew that I had to leave, that I had to get out before it was too late. I started making secret preparations, squirreling away money and looking for a new place to live. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I also knew that I couldn't stay in a marriage where I was constantly being lied to and betrayed. One night, while Jack and his parents were out at dinner, I packed up my essentials and loaded them into my car. I left a note on the kitchen table, explaining that I was leaving and that I wanted a divorce. I knew it would be a shock to him, but I also knew that I had to do what was best for myself, no matter how painful it might be. As I drove away from the house that had once been my home, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I knew that the road ahead would be difficult, that I would have to rebuild my life from scratch, but I also knew that I was strong enough to do it. I thought back to all the times I had compromised my own happiness for the sake of others, all the times I had put my own needs last. But not anymore. From now on, I was putting myself first, no matter what anyone else thought or said. As I merged onto the highway, the city lights twinkling in the distance, I felt a sense of hope and possibility wash over me. I knew that I had made the right decision, that I was finally taking control of my own life. And even though I didn't know what the future held, I knew that I was ready to face it head-on, no matter what challenges lay ahead. "I'm done with this charade," I said, staring into Jack's stunned eyes as I stood in the doorway of our once shared home, a suitcase in hand. He shook his head in disbelief, his voice trembling. "Marnie, what are you doing? Where are you going?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the words I knew I had to say. "I'm leaving, Jack. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep living a life where I'm constantly disrespected and betrayed." His eyes widened and he reached for me, but I stepped back, my resolve unwavering. "Marnie, please, we can work this out. We can talk about this." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "Talk? Jack, we've been talking for years and nothing has changed. You've chosen your parents over me time and time again, and I'm done being a second-class citizen in my own home." He looked at me, his eyes filled with confusion and hurt. "But Marnie, I love you. I never meant to hurt you." I felt a pang of sadness in my heart, but I knew I couldn't let it sway me. I know you love me, Jack, but sometimes love isn't enough. I need a partner who respects me, who values my needs and desires, and I'm sorry, but you haven't been that partner for a long time." With that, I turned and walked out the door, my heart heavy but my head held high. I knew it wouldn't be easy, starting over at my age, but I also knew that I deserved better than the life I'd been living. As I drove away from the house that had once been my home, I thought back to all the secret preparations I had made over the past few weeks. I had found a small apartment across town, a place where I could start fresh and rebuild my life on my own terms. I had transferred my essential belongings there bit by bit, careful not to arouse suspicion from Jack or his parents. I knew that they would be shocked when they discovered I was gone, that they would likely try to convince me to come back. But I was resolute in my decision, knowing that I had to put my own well-being first for once in my life. As the days turned into weeks, I threw myself into my new life, focusing on my work and my own personal growth. I reconnected with old friends, started taking yoga classes, and even began volunteering at a local women's shelter. For the first time in years, I felt like I was truly living for myself, rather than for someone else's expectations. But even as I embraced my newfound freedom, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that lingered in the back of my mind. I knew that Jack and his parents wouldn't let me go without a fight, that they would likely try to manipulate me into coming back. And sure enough, one evening as I was leaving work, I found Jack waiting for me in the parking lot, his face etched with desperation. "Marnie, please," he begged, his voice cracking with emotion. "Come home. We can fix this. I promise things will be different." I looked at him, my heart aching for the man I had once loved so deeply, but I knew that I couldn't go back, that I couldn't risk losing myself again in the toxic cycle of our marriage. "I'm sorry, Jack," I said, my voice steady and clear. "But I've made my decision. I need to do what's best for me, and that means moving on with my life." He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and despair. "But Marnie, we're married. We made a commitment to each other. You can't just walk away from that." I shook my head, a sad smile playing at the corners of my lips. "I'm not walking away from our commitment, Jack. I'm walking away from a situation that was slowly destroying me, and I hope that someday you'll understand that." With that, I turned and walked away, my heart heavy, but my spirit unbroken. I knew that the road ahead would be difficult, that I would face challenges and obstacles I had never encountered before. But I also knew that I was strong enough to face them head on, to build a life that was truly my own. And for the first time in years, I felt a sense of hope and possibility that I had almost forgotten existed. "You've taken everything from us, Marnie," Clara snarled, her face contorted with anger as she stood on the doorstep of my new apartment, Jack hovering behind her. I felt my heart race, but I forced myself to remain calm, to stand my ground. "I haven't taken anything from you, Clara. I've simply taken back my own life." She scoffed, her eyes narrowing. "Your life? What about our family? What about the promises you made to Jack, to all of us?" I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "Promises? Clara, you've done nothing but undermine and manipulate me from the moment Jack and I got married. You've never respected me or my role in this family." Jack stepped forward, his face etched with desperation. "Marnie, please, we can work this out. Just come home with us, and we'll figure it all out." I looked at him, my heart aching for the man I had once loved so deeply. But I knew that I couldn't go back, that I couldn't risk losing myself again in the toxic cycle of our marriage. "I'm sorry, Jack," I said, my voice steady and clear. "But I'm not coming back. I've made my decision, and I'm standing by it." Clara's face twisted with rage, and she lunged forward, her finger pointing accusingly at me. "You selfish, ungrateful woman. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By abandoning your family and running off to play house on your own?" I felt my anger rising, hot and fierce in my chest. "Everything you've done for me. Clara, all you've ever done is try to control me, to make me feel small and insignificant. You've never once treated me like an equal partner in this family." She scoffed, her eyes flashing with contempt. "Equal partner? Marnie, you're nothing but a gold digger who married my son for his money and then abandoned him when things got tough." I felt my jaw clench, my hands balling into fists at my sides. "How dare you?" I said, my voice low and dangerous. I have never been after Jack's money. I married him because I loved him, because I wanted to build a life with him. But you've never been able to see that, have you? You've always seen me as a threat, as someone who is trying to take your place in Jack's life." Clara's face paled, and she took a step back, her eyes wide with shock. "That's not true," she said, her voice trembling. "I've only ever wanted what's best for my son, for our family." I shook my head, a sad smile playing at the corners of my lips. "No, Clara, you've only ever wanted what's best for yourself. You've used guilt and manipulation to keep Jack under your thumb, to make him choose you over me time and time again, and I'm done being a pawn in your games." Jack looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and despair. "Marnie, please, don't do this. We can fix this. I know we can." I looked at him, my heart breaking for the man I had once loved so deeply, but I knew that I had to stand firm, that I had to protect myself and my own well-being. "I'm sorry, Jack," I said, my voice soft but resolute. "But I've made my decision. I need to do what's best for me, and that means moving on with my life. I hope that someday you'll understand that." With that, I turned and walked back into my apartment, closing the door firmly behind me. I leaned against it, my heart racing and my hands trembling. I knew that the confrontation had been necessary, that I had needed to stand up for myself and my own needs, but that didn't make it any easier, didn't erase the pain and heartbreak of leaving behind the life I had once known. As I stood there trying to catch my breath and calm my racing thoughts, I heard a soft knock at the door. I hesitated for a moment, wondering if it was Jack or Clara come to try and convince me to change my mind. But when I opened the door, I was surprised to see Elias standing there, a concerned look on his face. "Marnie, are you okay?" he asked, his voice gentle and soothing. I heard shouting from the hallway. "Is everything all right?" I felt my eyes fill with tears, and I shook my head, my voice cracking with emotion. "No, Elias, everything is not all right. But it will be. I know it will be." He nodded, his eyes filled with understanding and compassion. "I'm here for you, Marnie. Whatever you need, I'm here." I smiled through my tears, feeling a sense of gratitude and warmth wash over me. I knew that the road ahead would be difficult, that I would face challenges and obstacles I had never encountered before. But I also knew that I wasn't alone, that I had people in my life who cared about me and supported me. And for the first time in years, I felt a sense of hope and possibility that I had almost forgotten existed. "For the first time in years, I feel free," I wrote in my diary, a smile playing at the corners of my lips as I sat in my cozy new apartment, the morning sun streaming through the windows. It had been 6 months since I had left Jack and his family, 6 months since I had taken the leap of faith and started over on my own terms. And while it hadn't been easy, I knew that I had made the right decision. In the weeks following my confrontation with Clara and Jack, I had thrown myself into my work, focusing on my career and my own personal growth. I had started taking yoga classes, joined a book club, and even begun volunteering at a local women's shelter. But perhaps the most rewarding thing I had done was start a support group for women who had gone through similar experiences to my own. Every week, we would meet at a local community center, sharing our stories and offering each other support and encouragement. As I sat there, listening to the other women talk about their own struggles and triumphs, I felt a sense of connection and purpose that I had never experienced before. I knew that I wasn't alone, that there were other women out there who had faced the same challenges and come out stronger on the other side. One evening, after a particularly emotional meeting, I found myself walking home with Sarah, my colleague and confidant. We had grown closer over the past few months, bonding over our shared experiences and our determination to build better lives for ourselves. "I'm so proud of you, Marnie," she said, her voice warm and sincere. "You've come so far in such a short time. I know it hasn't been easy, but you've handled everything with such grace and strength." I felt my eyes fill with tears, and I reached out to hug her, feeling a sense of gratitude and warmth wash over me. "Thank you, Sarah," I said, my voice cracking with emotion. "I couldn't have done it without you, without all of you." She smiled, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "Well, I think there's one person in particular who's been a big help to you lately. A certain coworker with a charming smile and a kind heart." I felt my cheeks flush and I looked down at my feet, trying to hide my smile. Elias has been a good friend, I said, my voice soft and shy. But that's all it is, a friendship. Sarah raised an eyebrow, her lips twitching with amusement. Sure, Marnie, whatever you say. I laughed, feeling a sense of lightness and joy that I hadn't experienced in years. I knew that Sarah was right, that there was something special growing between Elias and me. But I also knew that I needed to take things slow, to focus on my own healing and growth before I could even think about starting a new relationship. As I walked into my apartment that night, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. I had come so far in such a short time, had faced my fears and taken control of my own life. And while I knew that there would still be challenges and obstacles ahead, I also knew that I was strong enough to face them head-on. I thought back to the life I had once known, to the years I had spent trapped in a toxic and unhealthy marriage. I thought of Jack and Clara, struggling to adjust to their new reality without me, living in a cluttered and chaotic house that they could barely maintain on their own. A part of me felt a twinge of sadness for them, knowing that they were facing the consequences of their own actions and choices. But I also knew that I couldn't dwell on the past, that I had to keep moving forward and building the life that I wanted for myself. As I sat down at my desk, ready to start a new day and a new chapter in my life, I couldn't help but smile. I knew that the road ahead would be long and winding, that there would be ups and downs and twists and turns. But I also knew that I was ready for whatever lay ahead, that I had the strength and the resilience to face anything that came my way. And for the first time in years, I felt truly happy, truly at peace with myself and my choices. I knew that I had made the right decision, that I had taken back my life and my freedom, and I knew that no matter what happened next, I would never let anyone take that away from me again. Ellen, I can't believe you turned down my parents' invitation. They were just trying to help. What's wrong with you? Mark's words cut through me like a knife. I stared at him in disbelief, struggling to keep my composure. After 30 years of marriage, I thought he knew me better than that. Help? You call your mother's constant meddling and criticism help? I shot back, my voice trembling with frustration. She wants to move in with us permanently, Mark. Don't you see how suffocating that would be? He shook his head, his expression a mixture of exasperation and disappointment. Mom's getting older, Ellen. She needs us. I bit my tongue, resisting the urge to remind him of all the times his mother had belittled my choices, undermined my authority as a parent, and driven a wedge between us. Nancy Peterson had made it her life's mission to control every aspect of our lives, and Mark was too blind to see it. What about what I need, Mark? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. When was the last time you considered my feelings? He opened his mouth to respond, but I held up my hand, cutting him off. I was tired of having the same argument, tired of feeling like an outsider in my own home. As I looked at my husband, the man I had once loved with every fiber of my being, I saw a stranger. The years had slowly chipped away at our bond, eroding the foundation of our marriage, until all that was left was a hollow shell. I thought back to the early days, when Mark's fledgling business was struggling, and I had put my own career on hold to support him. I had believed in him, in us, and sacrificed so much for the sake of our family. But somewhere along the way, that selfless devotion had become a noose around my neck, strangling the life out of me. Nancy had been there every step of the way, her sharp tongue and critical eye picking apart my every decision. And Mark, bless his soul, had always taken her side, too afraid to stand up to his overbearing mother. I'm done, Mark, I said, my voice steady and resolute. I've given everything to this marriage, to our family, and what have I received in return? Disrespect, neglect, and a complete disregard for my feelings. His eyes widened, and he opened his mouth to protest, but I held up my hand once more. No, let me finish. I've spent too long trying to please everyone else, sacrificing my own happiness for the sake of keeping the peace. But not anymore. I could see the confusion and hurt etched on his face, but I felt no remorse. For the first time in years, I felt alive, a fire burning within me that had been smothered for far too long. I'm taking back control of my life, Mark, and if you can't support me in that, then maybe it's time we reevaluated our relationship. The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of decades of unspoken resentment and pain. I knew there was no turning back, no more compromises to be made. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when I would finally stand up for myself and demand the respect I deserved. And as I looked into Mark's eyes, I saw the first glimmers of understanding dawning on him. He might not have realized it yet, but a storm was brewing, and I was the eye of the hurricane, calm and resolute, ready to unleash a fury that would shake the very foundations of our lives. The memories came flooding back, a torrent of emotions I had suppressed for far too long. I thought back to the early days of our marriage, when Mark's fledgling business was struggling, and I had put my own dreams on hold to support him. It was a sacrifice I had made willingly, believing in the strength of our love and the future we were building together. Little did I know that the seeds of my discontent had been planted long before, nurtured by the ever-present specter of Nancy Peterson, my mother-in-law from hell. From the moment I met her, Nancy had made it clear that I would never be good enough for her precious son. Her cutting remarks and disapproving glares were a constant reminder that, in her eyes, I was an interloper, a mere footnote in the grand narrative of the Peterson family legacy. "You know, Ellen, a woman's place is in the home," she would say, her voice dripping with condescension. "Mark needs a wife who can take care of him, not some career-obsessed harpy." I would bite my tongue, swallowing the bitter retorts that threatened to spill forth. Mark would simply shrug, too afraid to stand up to his domineering mother, and I would be left to seethe in silence. As the years passed, Nancy's influence only grew stronger. She would insert herself into every aspect of our lives, from the way we decorated our home to the way we raised our children, and Mark, ever the dutiful son, would acquiesce to her every whim, leaving me feeling increasingly isolated and alone. I remember the day I discovered the truth about her interference in my life. It was a chance encounter with an old friend, one I hadn't seen in years, that opened my eyes to the depths of Nancy's manipulation. "Ellen, I've been trying to reach you for ages," my friend had said, her brow furrowed in concern. "I kept calling, but your mother-in-law said you didn't want to be disturbed." The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. All those missed opportunities, those connections I had allowed to wither and die, all because of Nancy's meddling. She had systematically cut me off from my support system, isolating me from the very people who could have helped me see the truth about my marriage. In that moment, the scales fell from my eyes, and I saw my relationship with Mark for what it truly was. A twisted web of lies and deceit, spun by a master manipulator who had been pulling the strings all along. As I looked back on those early years, I realized that the sacrifices I had made were not born of love, but of a desperate need to please, to conform to the twisted ideals that Nancy had imposed upon me. And Mark, my supposed partner in life, had been complicit in it all, content to let his mother dictate the terms of our existence. The anger that had been simmering within me for years began to boil over, a white-hot rage that threatened to consume me. How could I have been so blind, so willing to sacrifice my own happiness for the sake of a man who had never truly seen me as an equal? It was in that moment that I made a vow to myself. No more. No more sacrifices, no more compromises. I would take back control of my life, reclaim the independence that had been stolen from me, and exact a revenge so sweet that even Nancy Peterson would be forced to acknowledge the strength and resilience of the woman she had so callously underestimated. The path ahead would not be easy, but I was ready to shed the shackles of my past and embrace a future of my own making, one where I would never again be beholden to the whims of others. It was time for Ellen Morrison to rise from the ashes and take her rightful place in the world, no matter the cost. The tension in our home was palpable, a thick miasma of resentment and bitterness that hung in the air like a noxious cloud. Mark had become a stranger to me, a mere shadow of the man I had once loved, his every action a testament to the corrosive influence of his mother. It was as if a switch had been flipped, and the once attentive husband I had known had been replaced by a cold, indifferent stranger. He would come home from work, barely acknowledging my presence, and retreat to his study, shutting me out both physically and emotionally. "Mark, we need to talk," I would say, my voice trembling with a mixture of hurt and frustration. He would barely look up from his computer, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Can it wait, Ellen? I'm swamped with work." And so it would go, day after day, week after week, until the distance between us had grown into an unbridgeable chasm. I felt like a ghost in my own home, invisible and unheard, my needs and desires cast aside in favor of his all-consuming work and his mother's relentless demands. It was during one of these interminable silences that the final straw came, a betrayal so profound that it shattered what little remained of my faith in our marriage. "Ellen, you'll never guess what I just heard," my friend Diane said over the phone, her voice laced with concern. "Mark has been telling people that he's planning to sell the vacation home." The words hit me like a physical blow, stealing the breath from my lungs. The vacation home, our little slice of paradise nestled in the mountains, had been a dream we had shared for years. It was a place where we could escape the stresses of daily life, a sanctuary where we could reconnect and rekindle the flames of our love. And now, without so much as a word to me, Mark had decided to sell it, to strip away yet another piece of our shared history. "That can't be true," I stammered, even as my heart sank with the realization that it was. He would never do that without talking to me first. But deep down, I knew better. This was just the latest in a long line of betrayals, a pattern of disrespect and disregard that had become the norm in our marriage. When Mark finally came home that evening, I was waiting for him, my anger simmering just beneath the surface. "Is it true?" I demanded, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. "Are you really planning to sell the vacation home?" He had the decency to look sheepish, at least for a moment, before his expression hardened into a mask of indifference. "It's for the best, Ellen," he said, as if that simple statement could justify his actions. "Mom and Dad need the money, and it's just sitting there gathering dust." I stared at him in disbelief, my hands clenching into fists at my sides. "That home is just as much mine as it is yours, Mark. How could you make such a monumental decision without even consulting me?" He shrugged, his eyes already drifting back to the stack of papers on his desk. "I didn't think you'd mind. It's not like we use it that much anymore." In that moment, something inside me snapped. The years of neglect, the constant prioritization of his family over our own, the utter disregard for my feelings and desires, it all came crashing down around me, a tidal wave of rage and resentment that I could no longer contain. "You didn't think I'd mind?" I hissed, my voice low and dangerous. "You arrogant, selfish bastard. That home was our dream, our future, and you just tossed it aside like it was nothing." Mark's eyes widened, and for the first time in years I saw a flicker of fear cross his face. But I was beyond caring, beyond the point of no return. "This is it, Mark," I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and resolve. "This is the last straw. I'm done being treated like a second-class citizen in my own marriage. If you think for 1 second that I'm going to sit back and let you sell our home, our future, to support your precious mother, you've got another thing coming." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of years of pent-up frustration and pain, and as I looked into Mark's eyes, I saw the first glimmers of understanding dawning on him. He might not have realized it yet, but a storm was brewing, a tempest of my own making, and I was the eye of the hurricane, calm and resolute, ready to unleash a fury that would shake the very foundations of our lives. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions, a tempestuous storm of anger and determination that threatened to consume me. Mark's dismissive attitude had been the final straw, the catalyst that set in motion a chain of events that would forever alter the course of our lives. I knew I couldn't navigate these treacherous waters alone, so I turned to the one person I could always count on, my sister Susan. She had been a rock for me throughout the years, a steadfast ally in the face of Nancy's relentless meddling and Mark's indifference. "He's selling the vacation home, Susan," I said, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. Without even consulting me, without a second thought for what it means to me. Susan's eyes widened, and I could see the anger flashing across her face. "That selfish bastard," she spat, her normally gentle demeanor replaced by a fierce protectiveness. "After everything you've sacrificed for him, for that family, this is how he repays you?" I nodded, the tears I had been holding back finally spilling down my cheeks. I can't do this anymore, Susan. I can't keep living like this, constantly disrespected and devalued. It's killing me inside. Susan reached across the table and took my hand in hers, her grip firm and reassuring. Then don't, she said, her voice resolute. You've given him more than enough chances, Ellen. It's time to take back control of your life. Her words resonated deep within me, igniting a fire that had been smoldering for far too long. She was right. I had spent years sacrificing my own happiness for the sake of a man who had long since stopped appreciating me, stopped seeing me as an equal partner in our marriage. It was time to take a stand, to reclaim the independence and self-worth that had been slowly chipped away by years of emotional neglect. You're right, I said, my voice steady and determined. I'm done being a doormat. Mark wants to sell our home, our future, without even consulting me? Fine, but he's going to pay for it. One way or another. Susan's eyes narrowed, and I could see the wheels turning in her mind. What did you have in mind? A slow smile spread across my face, a sense of calm determination settling over me. I'm going to hit him where it hurts, Susan. His business, his finances, everything he's built at the expense of our marriage. I'm going to take it all away from him, piece by piece, until he has no choice but to see me as his equal. Susan nodded slowly, a glint of admiration in her eyes. It's about time you stood up for yourself, sis. But you can't do this alone. You're going to need help, someone who knows the ins and outs of finance and can help you protect yourself. I knew exactly who she was referring to. Janet Lewis, my oldest and dearest friend, a woman who had weathered her own marital storms and emerged victorious. Janet was a force to be reckoned with, a financial powerhouse with a keen eye for strategy and a heart of pure steel. You're right, I said, my resolve hardening with each passing moment. It's time to call in the cavalry. The wheels were in motion and there was no turning back. Mark might have thought he had won, that he could simply discard me like an unwanted relic of the past, but he was sorely mistaken. I was done being the meek, submissive wife, the one who turned a blind eye to his indiscretions and his mother's manipulations. No, this was a new chapter in my life, a rebirth of sorts, and I was determined to emerge from the ashes stronger, fiercer, and more resilient than ever before. Mark had awoken a sleeping giant, and by the time I was through with him, he would rue the day he ever dared to underestimate the power of a woman scorned. The next few days were a whirlwind of clandestine meetings and hushed conversations as Susan and I put the wheels in motion for my grand plan of retribution. Janet Lewis, my oldest and dearest friend, was the linchpin that would hold everything together. Janet was a force to be reckoned with, a financial powerhouse who had weathered her own marital storms and emerged victorious. She was the one who had helped me secure my finances years ago, ensuring that a portion of my assets were safely tucked away beyond Mark's reach. Ellen, you know I've always had your back, Janet said as we sat across from each other in her sleek downtown office. But are you sure about this? Once you set this plan in motion, there's no going back. I met her gaze, my resolve unwavering. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Janet. Mark has taken me for granted for the last time. It's time he learned what it means to truly respect me. Janet nodded slowly, a glint of admiration in her eyes. All right then, let's get to work. Over the next few days, Janet and I pored over financial statements, legal documents, and business records, meticulously piecing together a comprehensive picture of Mark's empire. It was a tangled web of shell companies, offshore accounts, and questionable dealings, the perfect ammunition for my revenge. As we worked, Janet would regale me with stories of her own marital struggles, tales of a husband who had grown complacent and neglectful, much like Mark. But unlike me, Janet had taken decisive action, leveraging her financial acumen to secure her independence and emerge from the ashes of her failed marriage stronger than ever before. You know, Ellen, when I was going through my own hell, the one thing that kept me going was the strength of my friendships, she said, her voice tinged with a mixture of sadness and resolve. My girlfriends were my rock, my support system when everything else was crumbling around me. I nodded, thinking of Susan and the unwavering support she had shown me throughout this ordeal. I don't know what I'd do without you all, I admitted. You've given me the courage to stand up for myself, to take back control of my life. Janet reached across the table and squeezed my hand, her eyes shining with a mixture of pride and determination. That's what we do, Ellen. We women have to stick together, especially in the face of adversity. And trust me, once we're done with Mark, he'll never underestimate the power of a woman scorned again. With Janet's guidance, I began to quietly divert funds, siphoning off a portion of my assets into secure accounts that Mark had no knowledge of. It was a delicate dance, one that required precision and stealth, but with each transfer, I felt a sense of empowerment wash over me. No longer was I the meek, submissive wife, content to let Mark and his mother dictate the terms of my existence. I was taking control, reclaiming the independence that had been stripped away from me over the years, and I was doing it on my own terms. As the pieces of my plan fell into place, I could feel the tension mounting, a palpable sense of anticipation that crackled in the air like static electricity. Mark remained oblivious, going about his daily routine with the same indifference that had become the norm in our marriage. But I knew better. I knew that the calm before the storm was merely a fleeting illusion, and that soon the tempest I had been carefully cultivating would be unleashed, shattering the fragile facade of our lives and leaving Mark to confront the harsh reality of his actions. And when that moment came, I would be ready, standing tall and resolute, a phoenix rising from the ashes of my former self, reborn in the fires of my own determination and resilience. Mark might have thought he had won, but he was about to learn a valuable lesson. Never underestimate the power of a woman who has finally found her voice. The day had finally come when I was forced to confront Mark about his disrespectful behavior. His dismissive attitude and lack of empathy had pushed me to the edge, and I could no longer ignore the pain he had caused. "Mark, we need to have an honest conversation," I said, my voice trembling with barely contained anger. "Your actions have been unacceptable, and you've shown a complete disregard for my feelings." He tried to defend himself, but I wasn't having it. "You've been emotionally abusive, and your behavior is inexcusable," I said, holding his gaze firmly. "If you can't even acknowledge the pain you've caused, then you're not truly remorseful." Tears stung my eyes as I recounted the countless times he had dismissed my concerns and belittled my emotions. "I deserved better," I said, my voice breaking. "I deserved to be heard, to be respected, to have my feelings validated." He looked away, unable to meet my gaze, and I knew in that moment that I had been right to stand my ground. His inability to take responsibility for his actions was the ultimate betrayal. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation that was to come. "You've left me no choice but take matters into my own hands," I said, my voice laced with determination. "I will not let you continue to disrespect me or dismiss my feelings." With that, I laid out the evidence, the cold, hard facts that proved his disregard for my well-being. I presented the case, the undeniable truth that he had failed to uphold the sanctity of our relationship. He tried to defend himself, to justify his actions, but I remained resolute. I had given him every opportunity to make amends, to acknowledge his wrongdoing, but he had chosen to remain willfully ignorant. As I spoke, I could see the realization dawning in his eyes, the understanding that he had gone too far, that he had pushed me beyond the point of no return. But it was too late for apologies, too late for empty promises. I had given him every chance to make things right, to show the remorse and accountability that was expected of him. But he had failed, and now he would have to face the consequences of his actions. With a heavy heart, I delivered the final blow, the ultimatum that would either break him or force him to confront the truth. I offered him a chance to make amends, to acknowledge his wrongdoing, and commit to a path of redemption. But if he chose to remain defiant, to continue down the path of denial and self-destruction, then I would have no choice but to cut him off, to sever the ties that bound us together. The decision was his, and the consequences would be his to bear. The day of reckoning had finally arrived. I had given Mark every opportunity to make amends, to acknowledge the pain he had caused, and commit to a path of redemption. But he had remained steadfast in his denial, unwilling to confront the harsh reality of his actions. And so, with a heavy heart, I prepared to deliver the final blow, the one that would shatter the fragile facade of our lives and expose the truth for all to see. It was Nancy, ever the orchestrator of family gatherings, who had unwittingly provided the perfect stage for my revenge. She had summoned the entire clan to her home, a grand affair to celebrate some meaningless milestone or another. As I stepped through the doors, I could feel the weight of the world on my shoulders, the burden of years of emotional neglect and disrespect. But I was no longer the meek, submissive wife, content to let others dictate the terms of my existence. I was a woman reborn, a phoenix rising from the ashes of my former self, and I was ready to unleash a fury that would shake the very foundations of this family. Mark was there, of course, his eyes narrowing as he caught sight of me. He knew something was amiss, could sense the shift in the air, the crackling tension that heralded the storm to come. "Ellen," he said, his voice a mixture of wariness and condescension, "I didn't think you'd show up." I met his gaze, my eyes burning with a fire that had been stoked for far too long. "Oh, I wouldn't miss this for the world, Mark," I said, my voice dripping with barely contained venom. Nancy, ever the oblivious matriarch, bustled over, her face a mask of forced cheer. "Ellen, dear, so glad you could make it," she simpered, her words laced with the same thinly veiled disdain that had been a constant throughout our relationship. I smiled, a cold, predatory grin that sent a shiver down her spine. "Of course, Nancy," I said, my voice saccharine sweet. "I wouldn't dream of missing the opportunity to share some family news." Mark's eyes widened, and I could see the first flickers of fear dancing across his features. He knew, in that moment, that the game was up, that the carefully constructed facade of our lives was about to come crashing down around us. With a deep breath, I turned to face the gathered crowd, my voice ringing out clear and strong. "For years, I have been the victim of emotional abuse and neglect," I began, my words cutting through the stunned silence like a knife. "My husband, Mark, has shown a complete disregard for my feelings, my needs, and my worth as a partner in our marriage." The murmurs began, a ripple of shock and disbelief that quickly grew into a roar of outrage. But I was undeterred, my resolve steeled by years of pain and sacrifice. "But that ends today," I declared, my voice rising above the clamor. "I will no longer be a silent witness to my own devaluation. I will no longer allow myself to be treated as a second-class citizen in my own home." Mark tried to interject, to stem the tide of my fury, but I silenced him with a single, withering glare. "You have betrayed me in the most profound way, Mark," I said, my voice trembling with barely contained emotion. "You have taken my love, my loyalty, my sacrifices, and cast them aside as if they were worthless, but no more." With a flourish, I produced the evidence, the damning proof of his misdeeds and financial indiscretions. The room fell silent, the weight of the revelations hanging heavy in the air. "This is the price of your neglect, Mark," I said, my voice ringing with a new strength and conviction. "This is the consequence of your disrespect and emotional abuse." Mark's face contorted with rage, his carefully cultivated mask of indifference crumbling before my very eyes, but I was unmoved, my resolve unshakable. "You thought you could control me, manipulate me into submission," I said, my voice laced with a mixture of sadness and triumph. "But you underestimated the depth of my resilience, the strength of my spirit." As I looked around the room, I saw the dawning realization in the eyes of my family and friends. They understood, in that moment, the depths of my struggle, the pain I had endured in the name of preserving a hollow facade of marital bliss. And in their eyes, I saw something more, a glimmer of respect, a newfound appreciation for the woman who had emerged from the ashes of her former self, stronger, fiercer, and more resilient than ever before. It was in that moment that I knew I had won, that the shackles of my past had been well and truly broken. I was free, liberated from the chains of emotional abuse and neglect that had bound me for far too long. And as I looked at Mark, his face twisted in a mask of impotent rage, I felt a sense of pity wash over me. For he was the one who was truly trapped, a prisoner of his own hubris and arrogance, unable to see the world beyond the narrow confines of his own selfish desires. But I was done with him, done with the pain and the heartache that had defined our relationship for far too long. It was time to move on, to embrace the future that lay ahead, a future of my own making, where I would never again be beholden to the whims of others. As I turned and walked away, my head held high, I could feel the weight of the world lifting from my shoulders. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt a sense of hope, a glimmer of possibility that had been all but extinguished by the darkness of my marriage. I was free. And nothing, not even the ghosts of my past, could ever take that away from me again. The weight of the world had been lifted from my shoulders, and with each step I took away from that fateful family gathering, I felt lighter, freer than I had in years. The shackles of my past had been well and truly broken, and I was finally able to breathe again, to embrace the future that lay ahead with a sense of hope and possibility. As I stepped out into the crisp autumn air, I was greeted by the warm embrace of my sister, Susan. Her eyes shone with a mixture of pride and relief, a silent acknowledgement of the strength and resilience I had displayed in the face of adversity. "You did it, sis," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You stood up for yourself, and you won." I nodded, a slow smile spreading across my face. "I didn't I?" I mused, the weight of my actions finally sinking in. I took back control of my life, my future. Susan pulled me into a tight hug, her arms a comforting reminder that I was not alone, that I had a support system of strong, fierce women who would always have my back. "I'm so proud of you, Ellen," she whispered. "You've shown us all what it means to be truly resilient, to never give up in the face of adversity." As we parted, I caught sight of Janet, her eyes shining with a mixture of admiration and understanding. She had been there, had walked the same path of emotional liberation that I now found myself on, and her presence was a reminder that the road ahead, while uncertain, was one that could be navigated with the right support system. "You did good, kiddo," she said, her voice laced with a mixture of pride and affection. "You showed that bastard what it means to underestimate the power of a woman scorned." I laughed, a genuine, full-bodied laugh that seemed to release years of pent-up tension and anguish. "I couldn't have done it without you, Janet," I said, reaching out to squeeze her hand. "You gave me the tools, the strength, to take back control of my life." Janet waved away my gratitude, her eyes twinkling with a mixture of mischief and resolve. "Don't thank me yet, kiddo," she said. "We've still got work to do, a whole new chapter of your life to write." And with those words, I felt a sense of excitement bubbling up within me, a newfound zest for life that had been all but extinguished by the darkness of my marriage. The future was a blank canvas, waiting to be painted with the vibrant colors of my own making, and I was ready to embrace it with open arms. In the days and weeks that followed, I set about rebuilding my life, piece by piece. I found a cozy little apartment closer to Susan, a sanctuary where I could truly call the shots, where the ghosts of my past could no longer haunt me. I rediscovered old hobbies and passions that had been pushed aside in the name of keeping the peace, and I found myself reconnecting with old friends, forging new bonds, and strengthening the ties that had been strained by years of emotional neglect. It was a rebirth of sorts, a chance to reclaim the parts of myself that had been lost in the whirlwind of my marriage. And with each passing day, I felt myself growing stronger, more confident, more resilient than ever before. Of course, there were moments of doubt, fleeting shadows of insecurity that would creep in and threaten to derail my progress. But in those moments, I would turn to my support system, my sisterhood of fierce, unapologetic women who had walked the same path and emerged victorious. And in their eyes, I would see a reflection of my own strength, a reminder that I was not alone, that I had the power to shape my own destiny and forge a future that was truly my own. As I looked ahead, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and possibility. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt truly alive, truly free to embrace the world on my own terms. And who knows, maybe, someday, I would find the courage to open my heart to the possibility of companionship once again. But this time, it would be on my terms, with a partner who saw me as an equal, who respected and valued the strength and resilience that had carried me through the darkest of times. For now, though, I was content to simply revel in my newfound independence, to bask in the warmth of my own self-worth, and the knowledge that I had emerged from the ashes of my past, a stronger, fiercer, and more resilient woman than ever before. The future was mine to shape, and I intended to make the most of every single moment. "Rachel, what are you hiding from me? I'm not just a caregiver, I'm your wife." My voice trembled as I confronted my husband, my eyes threatening to spill over. Rachel looked up from his laptop, his expression a mix of annoyance and dismissal. "Monica, please, I don't have time for your dramatics. I have important work to do." I clenched my fists, the hidden drawer of love letters and intimate photos burning in my mind. "Don't brush me off like I'm some hired help. I found your little secret stash. Who is she?" Rachel sighed, closing his laptop. "It was a long time ago, before we were married. Ancient history." "Ancient history?" I scoffed. "Those photos look pretty recent to me, and the letters are dated from last year." "Enough!" Rachel snapped, his voice sharp. "I don't have to explain myself to you. Your job is to take care of my mother, not pry into my personal affairs." I recoiled as if he'd slapped me. "Your mother? Is that all I am to you? A glorified nurse?" Rachel stood, towering over me. "Don't be so dramatic. You knew what you were getting into when you married into this family." I opened my mouth to protest, but he cut me off. "I have to go. Mother needs her medication." He brushed past me, leaving me trembling with a potent mix of anger and hurt. As the front door slammed, I sank onto the couch, tears streaming down my cheeks. How had my life come to this? I was a successful caregiver before meeting Rachel, respected and independent. Now I felt like a prisoner in my own home, trapped by the weight of his indifference and the secrets he kept. But as the anger simmered within me, a newfound determination took root. I wouldn't be dismissed or ignored any longer. It was time to take control of my life and uncover the truth, no matter how ugly it might be. I wiped my tears and stood, my hands steady. Rachel might think he could brush me aside, but he had no idea what I was capable of. I was done being the obedient wife. It was time to fight back. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. I pored over the hidden letters and photos, piecing together the sordid details of Rachel's affair. The woman's name was Samantha, and their trysts had been going on for years, even after our marriage. But the betrayal ran deeper than just infidelity. I also uncovered evidence of financial mismanagement, with Rachel siphoning funds from his mother's accounts for his own use. Judith, my frail mother-in-law, was being taken advantage of by her own son. As the truth unraveled, my anger grew, fueled by a newfound sense of purpose. I wouldn't just confront Rachel. I would take back control of my life and protect Judith from further exploitation. The day Rachel returned from one of his business trips, I was ready. I laid out the evidence on the coffee table, my hands trembling with a mix of nerves and anticipation. When he walked through the door, his eyes widened at the sight of the damning letters and bank statements. "Monica, what is all this?" I met his gaze, my voice steady. "The truth, Rachel. The truth about your affair, your lies, and your betrayal of this family." His expression hardened. "How dare you go through my personal belongings? How dare you treat me like a servant in my own home?" I shot back. "I'm your wife, not some hired help, and I won't stand for your disrespect any longer." Rachel opened his mouth to protest, but I held up a hand, silencing him. "It's my turn to talk. I know everything about Samantha, about the money you've been stealing from your mother. It ends now." His face paled, and for the first time I saw a flicker of fear in his eyes. I had finally taken back control, and there was no turning back. As I laid out my demands, a divorce, full custody of the assets, and a promise to never mistreat Judith again, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The shackles of my oppression were finally broken, and a new chapter of my life was beginning. It wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to fight for my independence and my self-respect. Rachel had underestimated me for far too long, but those days were over. I was a force to be reckoned with, and nothing would stand in my way. The sprawling Victorian house loomed before me, its weathered exterior a stark contrast to the immaculate grounds. As I stepped inside, the musty scent of old furniture and faded memories enveloped me. "Welcome to your new home," Rachel said flatly, setting down my suitcase. "Mother's room is down the hall, and Karen's is upstairs." I nodded, already feeling like an intruder in this place. Rachel had made it clear that my role was to care for his aging mother, Judith, while he and his sister, Karen, handled the important matters. As if on cue, Karen descended the staircase, her perfectly coiffed hair and designer outfit a sharp contrast to the house's faded grandeur. Her eyes narrowed as she appraised me. "So, you're the new help," she said, her tone dripping with disdain. "I hope you're up to the task of caring for Mother. She can be quite demanding." I bristled at her dismissive tone, but before I could respond, a frail voice called out from down the hall. "Rachel? Is that you, dear?" Rachel sighed and gestured for me to follow. "Come on, let's get you acquainted with Mother." Judith's room was a sanctuary of sorts, filled with plush furnishings and the scent of lavender. The elderly woman herself was propped up in bed, her once vibrant features now etched with age and weariness. "Mother, this is Monica," Rachel said, his tone softening slightly. "She'll be taking care of you from now on." Judith's eyes brightened as she regarded me. "Oh, how lovely. It's so nice to have a friendly face around here." Karen scoffed from the doorway. "Don't get too attached, Mother. She's just the help." Judith's expression hardened. "Karen, that's enough. Monica is a guest in our home, and she will be treated with respect." I felt a surge of gratitude towards Judith, even as Karen rolled her eyes and stalked away. At least one person in this family seemed to have a shred of decency. Over the next few days, I settled into a routine of caring for Judith's needs while navigating the treacherous waters of the household dynamics. Karen made no secret of her disdain for me, constantly belittling my efforts and questioning my competence. "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" she would sneer as I helped Judith with her medication or physical therapy. Mother deserves only the best care. Judith, bless her soul, would always come to my defense. "Karen, stop harassing the poor girl. Monica is doing an excellent job." Still, the constant criticism wore me down, and I found myself retreating to the solitude of Judith's room whenever possible. There, at least, I could escape the weight of Karen's hostility and Rachel's indifference. One afternoon, as I was helping Judith with her exercises, she fixed me with a piercing gaze. "Monica, dear, you seem troubled. Is everything all right?" I hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal, but there was a kindness in Judith's eyes that compelled me to open up. "It's just this household, your family." I trailed off, searching for the right words. "Karen treats me like a servant, and Rachel barely acknowledges my existence. I feel so alone here." Judith's expression softened. "I know, dear. Karen has always been difficult. And Rachel, well, he's become a different man than the son I raised." She reached out and patted my hand. "But you mustn't let them break your spirit. You're a strong, capable woman, and you deserve far better than the way they've treated you." Her words ignited a spark within me, a newfound determination to stand up for myself and uncover the truth behind this family's secrets. If Judith could see my worth, then perhaps it was time I started seeing it too. As I helped Judith back into bed, I made a silent vow. No more would I cower in the face of Karen's cruelty or Rachel's neglect. I would unravel the mysteries of this household, one thread at a time, until I regained control of my life and my dignity. The weight of unseen chains had held me down for too long, but with Judith's support and my own resilience I would break free, no matter what it took. The shrill ring of the phone pierced the silence, shattering the fragile tranquility that had settled over the house. I hurried to answer it, half expecting Rachel's voice on the other end. "Hello? Monica, it's me." Rachel's tone was clipped, businesslike. "I have some news." I steeled myself, bracing for whatever bombshell he was about to drop. With Rachel, it was always one drama after another. "Karen and I are going on a trip, a necessary business venture to Hawaii. We'll be gone for a few weeks." My heart sank. Of course, another trip, another excuse to abandon his responsibilities. But this time, the sting was sharper, the betrayal more acute. "You're leaving me here alone? To take care of your mother by myself?" I fought to keep my voice steady. "Don't be dramatic," Rachel scoffed. "You're more than capable of handling things. Karen and I have important matters to attend to." In the background, I heard Karen's muffled voice, followed by a burst of laughter. The sound grated on my nerves, that a cruel reminder of the disdain they held for me. "But what about us?" I pressed, desperate to make him understand. "What about our marriage?" Rachel sighed, his impatience palpable. "Monica, we'll discuss this when I get back. Just focus on taking care of Mother, all right?" The line went dead, leaving me clutching the phone, a torrent of emotions swirling within me. Anger, hurt, frustration, they all coalesced into a burning determination. If Rachel and Karen thought they could just discard me, treat me like some disposable servant, they were sorely mistaken. I was done being the meek, obedient wife. It was time to take action. Over the next few days, I threw myself into caring for Judith, channeling my pent-up energy into ensuring her every need was met. But even as I tended to her, my mind was whirring, formulating a plan. I knew there were secrets lurking beneath the surface of this family, dark undercurrents that Rachel and Karen were desperate to keep hidden, and I intended to uncover them all, one by one. Judith, bless her soul, seemed to sense my determination. She would watch me with a knowing look in her eyes, offering subtle words of encouragement. "You're a strong woman, Monica," she said one day as I helped her with her exercises. "Don't let them break your spirit." Her words only fueled my resolve. If Judith, who had endured years of neglect from her own children, could still find the strength to persevere, then so could I. As the days ticked by, I began to notice little things: whispered phone calls, furtive glances, a strange tension in the air. It was as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable explosion. And then, one fateful afternoon, I stumbled upon a clue that would unravel everything. I was changing the linens in Rachel's study when a loose floorboard caught my eye. Curiosity piqued, I pried it open, revealing a hidden compartment beneath. And there, nestled among the dust and cobwebs, was a stack of envelopes addressed to Rachel in an unfamiliar handwriting. With trembling hands, I opened one, my eyes widening as I scanned the contents. It was a love letter, filled with intimate details and endearments, signed by a woman named Samantha. The pieces began to fall into place: Rachel's frequent business trips, his dismissive attitude towards me, the secrets he so desperately tried to conceal. He was having an affair, right under my nose. But as I dug deeper, poring over the letters and the accompanying photos, a sickening realization dawned on me. This wasn't just a casual fling. It was a long-term betrayal that had been going on for years, even before our marriage. White-hot fury coursed through my veins, burning away any lingering doubts or hesitations. Rachel had made a fool of me, disrespected me in the most profound way possible, and now he would pay the price. As I carefully replaced the floorboard, a steely determination settled over me. No more would I be the meek, submissive wife. It was time to take back control, to expose the truth and make Rachel face the consequences of his actions. The false tranquility that had blanketed this household was about to be shattered, and I would be the one wielding the hammer. The days crawled by in a blur of monotony and exhaustion. With Rachel and Karen gone, the burden of caring for Judith fell squarely on my shoulders. I rose before dawn and worked well into the night, tending to her every need with a dutiful diligence that belied the turmoil simmering beneath the surface. Judith, bless her soul, seemed to sense my inner struggle. She would watch me with those keen, knowing eyes, offering words of encouragement and support when I felt like crumbling under the weight of it all. "You're a remarkable woman, Monica," she would say, her frail hands squeezing mine. "Don't let them break you." Her words were a lifeline, a reminder that I was not alone in this battle against Rachel and Karen's callous disregard. Judith, too, had suffered at the hands of her own children's neglect, and yet she persevered with a quiet strength that humbled me. It was during one of our late-night talks that the first crack in the facade appeared. Judith had been unusually restless that evening, fidgeting and casting furtive glances around the room. "Monica, dear," she whispered, her voice trembling with urgency. "I need to show you something." Before I could respond, she had thrown off her blankets and swung her legs over the side of the bed. To my utter astonishment, she rose to her feet, standing tall and steady, a far cry from the frail, bedridden woman I had grown accustomed to. "But how?" I stammered, my eyes wide. Judith offered me a sly smile. "Let's just say I've been playing a little game of my own with Rachel and Karen." She crossed the room with surprising agility, retrieving a battered shoebox from the back of her closet. Inside were stacks of documents, checkbooks, and bank statements, a veritable treasure trove of financial records. "I've been keeping an eye on their dealings for years," Judith confided, her voice laced with bitterness. "Those ungrateful children of mine have been bleeding me dry, siphoning off funds for their own selfish desires." As she spread the documents before me, the full scope of Rachel and Karen's deception became clear. Forged signatures, hidden accounts, embezzled funds, it was all there, a tangled web of greed and betrayal. "They thought they could pull the wool over my eyes," Judith spat, her eyes flashing with righteous anger, "but I've been on to their games for far too long. In that moment, a profound shift occurred within me. The meek, downtrodden woman I had been mere weeks ago was gone, replaced by a steely resolve that mirrored Judith's own. If she, an elderly woman betrayed by her own flesh and blood, could find the strength to fight back, then so could I. As Judith and I pored over the damning evidence, a plan began to take shape. A plan to not only expose Rachel and Karen's misdeeds, but to reclaim the power and dignity they had so callously stripped from us. "We'll make them pay, Monica," Judith vowed, her voice laced with determination. "They'll rue the day they ever underestimated us." And so a covert alliance was forged, one built on shared pain and a burning desire for retribution. Judith and I became co-conspirators, united in our quest to unravel the tangled web of lies and deceit that had ensnared us both. As the days ticked by, our clandestine efforts intensified. We pored over financial records, meticulously documenting every discrepancy and irregularity. We strategized, plotting our every move with the precision of seasoned generals preparing for battle. And through it all, a newfound strength blossomed within me, a strength born of Judith's unwavering support and my own indomitable spirit. The shackles of oppression that had once bound me were falling away, replaced by a fierce determination to take back control of my life. Rachel and Karen might have thought they had me cornered, but they had gravely underestimated the power of two women scorned. The tides were turning, and soon the reckoning they so richly deserved would be upon them. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of clandestine activity. Judith and I became co-conspirators, united in our quest to dismantle the web of lies and deceit that had ensnared us both. Under the guise of caring for her ailing mother, I meticulously rearranged the household finances, diverting funds back into Judith's accounts and cutting off Rachel and Karen's access to her assets. With each transaction, I felt a surge of empowerment, reclaiming the control they had so callously stripped from us. Judith, for her part, was a force to be reckoned with. Gone was the frail, bedridden woman I had first encountered. In her place stood a formidable ally, her mind sharp and her determination unwavering. "They thought they could bleed me dry," she would say, her eyes flashing with righteous anger. "But they underestimated the lengths a mother will go to protect what's hers." Together, we pored over financial records, cross-checking every transaction, every withdrawal, every cent that had been siphoned away by Rachel and Karen's greed. It was a painstaking process, but one that fueled our resolve with each damning piece of evidence we uncovered. As the days ticked by, our clandestine efforts intensified. We held hushed conversations late into the night, strategizing our every move with the precision of seasoned generals preparing for battle. Judith's rehabilitation progressed in secret, her newfound strength a testament to the indomitable spirit that burned within her, and through it all, a profound shift occurred within me. The meek, downtrodden woman I had once been was no more, replaced by a steely resolve forged in the fires of betrayal and oppression. I was no longer content to simply weather the storm. I was determined to turn the tide, to reclaim the power and dignity that had been so callously stripped from me. With each passing day, our preparations grew more intricate, our plans more meticulously crafted. We rearranged the household staff, ensuring only those loyal to Judith remained. We secured copies of crucial documents, building an ironclad case against Rachel and Karen's misdeeds. And all the while the anticipation mounted, a palpable tension that crackled in the air like static electricity. We knew the reckoning was coming, the moment when the carefully constructed facade would shatter and the truth would be laid bare for all to see. As the date of Rachel and Karen's return drew near, a sense of calm settled over me. Gone were the doubts and insecurities that had once plagued me. In their place was a steely resolve, a quiet confidence born of the knowledge that we held the upper hand. The night before their arrival, Judith and I shared a final hushed conversation, our voices laced with determination. "Tomorrow the gloves come off," Judith declared, her eyes blazing with intensity. "No more hiding, no more pretenses. It's time to make them face the consequences of their actions." I nodded, my jaw set. They won't know what hit them. As we parted ways, a sense of purpose coursed through my veins. The stage was set, the players in position. All that remained was for the curtain to rise on the final act of our grand performance. The following morning, I rose before dawn, my nerves thrumming with anticipation. This was it, the moment we had been preparing for, the culmination of weeks of meticulous planning and unwavering determination. As I went about my morning routine, a strange sense of calm washed over me. Gone were the doubts and insecurities that had once plagued me. In their place was a quiet confidence, a knowledge that I was finally in control of my own destiny. The sound of the front door opening jolted me from my reverie. Showtime. I steeled myself, squaring my shoulders and lifting my chin. No more would I cower in the face of Rachel and Karen's cruelty. Today, the tables would turn, and they would be the ones forced to confront the consequences of their actions. As they swept into the foyer, tanned and relaxed from their Hawaiian getaway, I felt a surge of satisfaction at the looks of surprise on their faces. They had expected to find a meek, subservient housewife, but what they encountered was a woman reborn, a phoenix rising from the ashes of her former self. "Welcome home," I said, my voice steady and unwavering. "We have much to discuss." The moment Rachel and Karen swept through the door, tanned and relaxed from their Hawaiian getaway, I knew the game was afoot. They had expected to find a meek, subservient housewife, but what they encountered was a woman reborn, a phoenix rising from the ashes of her former self. "Welcome home," I said, my voice steady and unwavering. "We have much to discuss." Rachel's brow furrowed as he took in the scene before him. The stacks of financial records, the steely determination etched into my features. "Monica, what is all this?" Before he could utter another word, Judith emerged from the shadows, her posture erect and her eyes blazing with a fire I had never seen before. "It's time you faced the truth, son," she said, her voice laced with a mixture of anger and disappointment. "The lies, the deceit, the utter disrespect you've shown not just to Monica, but to me as well." Karen's eyes widened as she took in her mother's transformation. "Mother, what's going on here?" "What's going on," I interjected, "is that we've uncovered the truth about your little schemes, the embezzlement, the misappropriation of funds. It all ends now." Rachel's face paled as I laid out the evidence before them, bank statements, canceled checks, a paper trail that left no room for doubt. His hands trembled as he sifted through the damning documents, his carefully constructed facade crumbling with each new revelation. How did you find all this?" he stammered, his eyes darting between Judith and me. "Did you really think you could pull the wool over our eyes forever?" Judith scoffed. "I may be old, but I'm not a fool. I've known about your misdeeds for years, but I never imagined you'd stoop so low as to betray your own wife." It was then that I revealed the final piece of evidence, the love letters and intimate photos that had set this entire chain of events in motion. "You've been having an affair, Rachel," I said, my voice laced with a mixture of hurt and righteous anger. "With a woman named Samantha. For years, you've been lying to me, disrespecting me, treating me like some hired help instead of your wife." Karen's eyes widened in shock, but Rachel merely shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "So what?" he sneered. "You think a few love letters and some financial mismanagement give you the right to turn on your own family?" His words cut deep, but I refused to let him see my pain. Instead, I met his gaze with a steely resolve that seemed to unnerve him. "This isn't about turning on anyone, Rachel," I said. "This is about reclaiming the dignity and respect you've so callously stripped from us, from me and from your own mother." Judith stepped forward, her frail frame belying the strength of her conviction. "You've taken advantage of me for the last time, son. From now on, I'll be the one calling the shots. And if you think for one second that I'll let you continue to mistreat Monica, you're sorely mistaken." Rachel's eyes narrowed, and for a moment I thought he might lash out. But then something shifted in his demeanor, a flicker of fear passing across his features as he realized the true extent of our alliance. Karen, ever the opportunist, seized the moment to try and regain control of the situation. "Mother, you can't be serious," she pleaded. "Think of the family name, the legacy we've built. You can't just throw it all away on some misguided sense of loyalty to this outsider." But Judith was having none of it. "The only ones who have tarnished this family's name are you and your brother," she spat. "With your greed, your selfishness, your utter disregard for anyone but yourselves." As the confrontation escalated, the true depths of Rachel and Karen's depravity were laid bare. Long-buried grievances and resentments bubbled to the surface, tearing through the carefully constructed facade of familial harmony. Through it all, I stood tall, my resolve unwavering. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the culmination of weeks of careful planning and unwavering determination. And as the dust settled, one thing became abundantly clear. The balance of power had shifted, and Rachel and Karen were no longer the ones calling the shots. With Judith's support and the weight of the evidence on our side, we had exposed their true natures, their selfish motivations, and callous disregard for anyone but themselves. And in doing so, we had reclaimed the control they had so ruthlessly stripped from us. As Rachel and Karen sputtered and raged, their once formidable personas reduced to petulant tantrums, I felt a sense of triumph wash over me. The shackles of oppression had been broken, and a new chapter was about to begin, one where I would never again be subjugated or disrespected. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. There would be more confrontations, more challenges to face as we worked to dismantle the toxic legacy Rachel and Karen had built. But for the first time in a long time, I felt truly empowered, emboldened by the knowledge that I was no longer alone. With Judith by my side, a newfound ally and confidant, I knew that no obstacle was too great, no adversary too formidable. We had faced down the demons of our past and emerged victorious, and nothing would ever be the same again. The confrontation that followed was like a dam bursting, unleashing a torrent of long-buried grievances and resentments that had been simmering beneath the surface for years. As Rachel and Karen sputtered and raged, their once formidable personas reduced to petulant tantrums, the true depths of their depravity were laid bare. Accusations flew, bitter recriminations echoing off the walls as the carefully constructed facade of familial harmony shattered into a million pieces. Through it all, I stood tall, my resolve unwavering. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the culmination of weeks of careful planning and unwavering determination. And with Judith by my side, a newfound ally and confidant, I knew that no obstacle was too great, no adversary too formidable. Rachel, his eyes wild with a mixture of anger and fear, lashed out like a cornered animal. "You think you've won, don't you?" he spat, his words laced with venom. "You think a few financial discrepancies and some tawdry love letters give you the right to turn on your own family?" But Judith was having none of it. "Don't you dare try to twist this around, son," she said, her voice trembling with a lifetime's worth of pent-up frustration. "You and your sister have been bleeding me dry for years, taking advantage of my trust and my love for your own selfish gain. Karen, ever the opportunist, tried to deflect the blame onto me. She's poisoned you against us, Mother," she pleaded. "Can't you see she's just an outsider trying to tear this family apart for her own benefit?" But Judith's resolve was unshakable. "The only ones who have tarnished this family's name are you and your brother," she spat. "With your greed, your selfishness, your utter disregard for anyone but yourselves." As the arguments raged on, the true motivations behind Rachel and Karen's actions became painfully clear. Rachel, driven by a deep-seated sense of entitlement and a desire for material wealth, had seen his mother's assets as a personal piggy bank to be plundered at his whim. And Karen, bitter and resentful, had harbored a lifelong grudge against her brother, feeling overshadowed and unloved. Her spite towards me was merely an extension of that deep-rooted resentment, a misguided attempt to regain some semblance of control over a life that had always seemed to slip through her fingers. Through it all, my role became clear, to be the advocate, the voice of reason that guided Judith through the maelstrom of emotions and betrayals. With my support, she reclaimed control over her assets, her finances, her very life that had been so callously stripped from her by her own children. And as the dust settled, the true extent of Rachel and Karen's misdeeds became painfully clear. The embezzlement, the financial mismanagement, the utter disregard for their own mother's well-being, it was all laid bare, a damning indictment of their selfishness and greed. But even as they faced the consequences of their actions, even as the weight of their transgressions threatened to crush them, they remained defiant, lashing out with bitter recriminations and empty threats. "You'll regret this, Mother," Karen spat, her eyes blazing with fury. "We're your only family, and you've turned your back on us for that outsider." Rachel, his once charming facade crumbling, tried a different tack. "Think about what you're doing," he pleaded, his voice tinged with desperation. "We're blood, Mother. Surely that counts for something." But Judith was unmoved, her resolve steeled by years of neglect and betrayal. "Blood means nothing if it's poisoned by greed and selfishness," she said, her voice heavy with sadness. "You made your choices, and now you must face the consequences." As Rachel and Karen stormed out, their threats and recriminations echoing in their wake, a strange sense of calm settled over me. The battle had been won, the illusions shattered, and the path forward was clear. Judith turned to me, her eyes shining with a mixture of gratitude and newfound strength. "Thank you, Monica," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "For everything." I nodded, feeling a profound sense of connection with this remarkable woman who had endured so much. "We did it together," I replied, taking her hand in mine. "And now we can start anew, free from the shackles of their manipulation and deceit." As we stood there, united in our resolve, I knew that the road ahead would be long and arduous. There would be more battles to fight, more obstacles to overcome, as we worked to dismantle the toxic legacy Rachel and Karen had left in their wake. But for the first time in a long time, I felt truly empowered, emboldened by the knowledge that I was no longer alone. With Judith by my side, a kindred spirit and a fellow warrior, I knew that no challenge was too great, no adversary too formidable. The shattered illusions of the past had given way to a new reality, one forged in the fires of resilience and determination. And as we stepped forward into the unknown, I felt a sense of purpose and resolve that had been absent for far too long. The journey ahead would be long, but with Judith at my side, I knew that we would emerge victorious, our bond forged in the crucible of adversity and our spirits tempered by the flames of redemption. The aftermath of the confrontation was like a whirlwind, a flurry of activity, as Judith and I worked to dismantle the toxic legacy Rachel and Karen had left in their wake. With their departure, a weight had been lifted, and a newfound sense of purpose propelled us forward. The first order of business was securing Judith's assets and ensuring that Rachel and Karen could no longer siphon funds for their own selfish desires. It was a painstaking process, one that involved poring over financial records and closing loopholes they had exploited for years. But with each account secured, each paper trail severed, I felt a surge of empowerment. This was more than just righting a financial wrong. It was a symbolic reclamation of the control and dignity they had so callously stripped from us. As the dust settled, Judith and I turned our attention to the future, a future free from the shackles of their manipulation and deceit. For me, that meant leaving the sprawling Victorian house that had once felt like a gilded cage and striking out on my own. With Judith's blessing and the financial means she had reclaimed, I found a cozy apartment in the heart of the city, a sanctuary where I could begin to rebuild my life on my own terms. The process of divorce was swift and decisive, a clean break from the toxic marriage that had nearly broken me. And as I settled into my new surroundings, a sense of peace washed over me. Gone were the constant reminders of Rachel's betrayal, the echoes of Karen's cruel barbs. In their place was a newfound sense of freedom, a liberation from the oppressive weight of their expectations and demands. But even as I embraced this new chapter, I knew that my journey was far from over. The scars of their emotional abuse ran deep, and there were moments when the ghosts of the past threatened to overwhelm me. It was during those times that I turned to my oldest friend and confidant, Ben Peterson. A fellow caregiver from my days before marriage, Ben had been a constant source of support and encouragement, urging me to confront my oppressors and reclaim my independence. "You're a survivor, Monica," he would say, his warm smile and unwavering belief in me a balm for my wounded soul. "You faced down demons that would have crushed lesser women, and you've emerged stronger for it." With Ben's guidance, I began to rebuild not just my life, but my sense of self-worth. I found a job at a prestigious caregiving agency where my skills and experience were valued and respected, and as I immersed myself in my work, I felt a renewed sense of purpose, a reminder of the woman I had been before Rachel's betrayal had nearly broken me. But even as I forged ahead, Judith's journey was just beginning. With her assets secured and her children's influence finally severed, she made the bold decision to leave the Victorian house behind and start anew. I'll never forget the day she called me, her voice trembling with excitement. "Monica, I've found the most wonderful retirement community," she gushed. "A place where I can truly live, surrounded by people who appreciate me for who I am, not what I can provide them." As I helped her pack up her belongings and bid farewell to the house that had been both a prison and a sanctuary, I saw a transformation unfold before my eyes. Gone was the frail, downtrodden woman I had first encountered, replaced by a vibrant, radiant soul who had reclaimed her zest for life. In the months that followed, Judith flourished in her new surroundings, embracing a world of new experiences and friendships. She took up painting, traveled to exotic locales, and even found a special someone, a kind-hearted widower who cherished her for the remarkable woman she was. And as I watched her blossom, I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of gratitude and kinship. Judith had been my ally, my co-conspirator in the battle against Rachel and Karen's oppression. And now, we were both reaping the rewards of our hard-won victory, basking in the freedom and self-respect we had so fiercely fought for. As for Rachel and Karen, their names were rarely spoken, their influence reduced to distant echoes of a past we had both left behind. The toxic legacy they had tried to impose upon us had been dismantled, brick by brick, until nothing remained but the ashes of their own hubris and greed. In those rare moments when their memory did surface, it was met with a sense of indifference, a testament to the growth and resilience Judith and I had cultivated. They were mere footnotes in the grand narrative of our lives, footnotes that held no power over us any longer. And as I looked to the future, a future filled with possibility and promise, I couldn't help but feel a sense of profound gratitude for the journey that had brought me to this point. The path had been arduous, fraught with pain and betrayal, but it had also forged me into the woman I was today, strong, resilient, and unbreakable. The shackles of oppression had been cast off, and a new horizon beckoned, one where Judith and I could bask in the warmth of hard-won freedom and self-respect. It was a future we had fought for, tooth and nail, and one that we would embrace with open arms, unburdened by the weight of the past. I arrived home from the grocery store to find Harry sitting calmly on the living room couch, a suitcase packed beside him. My heart sank as he looked up at me, his expression devoid of emotion. "I'm leaving, Alice," he said flatly. "I've been seeing someone else. I'm done. Sign these." He thrust a stack of papers towards me. Divorce papers. I stared at him in disbelief, the grocery bags slipping from my trembling hands. "You can't be serious, Harry. We've been married for 35 years. His eyes narrowed. "It's over, Alice. I'm moving in with Marjorie." "Marjorie?" Our neighbor? The room started spinning as the weight of his betrayal hit me. How could he do this after everything we'd been through together? "But why?" I stammered, tears welling up. Was it something I did? "We can work through this, Harry. Please, let's talk." He shook his head, his jaw set. "There's nothing to discuss. I've made up my mind. Sign the papers, and we can make this clean." I sank into the armchair, clutching the divorce papers as sobs racked my body. Harry remained unmoved, his coldness cutting deeper than any knife. After decades of building a life together, of supporting his dreams and making sacrifices for our marriage, he was casting me aside like yesterday's trash. Flashes of our life together flickered through my mind. Our wedding day, the struggles of our early years, the joy of finally achieving stability. All those memories now tainted by his callous disregard. As the shock slowly gave way to anger, a newfound determination took root within me. I would not allow this man to strip me of my dignity. Not after everything I had endured and overcome. Wiping away my tears, I met his gaze with a steely resolve. "No, Harry, I won't just roll over and let you discard me like this." His brow furrowed in surprise at my sudden defiance. "Alice, don't make this harder than it needs to be." "Harder for who?" I shot back, my voice steadier than I expected. "You're the one who betrayed our vows, our family. You'll have to face the consequences." Harry opened his mouth to respond, but I held up a hand, cutting him off. "Save it. I don't want to hear your excuses or justifications. Just know this. I won't go down without a fight. You wanted to start over? Well, so will I, but on my own terms." With that, I gathered what little remained of my composure and strode out of the room, leaving Harry and his suitcase behind. A new chapter was beginning, one fueled by the burning embers of my shattered illusions and an unbreakable will to rise from the ashes, stronger than ever before. After that fateful night when Harry dropped the bombshell of his affair and impending departure, I found myself adrift, struggling to make sense of the past few decades of my life. How could I have been so blind to the cracks in our marriage? As the initial shock began to fade, memories from our earlier years together resurfaced, each one a bitter reminder of the sacrifices I had made for this man, for our family. I had retired early from my job as a high school English teacher, a career I had loved dearly, all to support Harry's dream of starting his own business. While he pursued his entrepreneurial ambitions, I became a housewife, tending to the domestic responsibilities that he so easily brushed aside. "Don't worry about the household stuff, Alice," he would say dismissively. "Focus on making sure dinner is ready when I get home from the office." Those first few years of my early retirement were some of the loneliest of my life. Gone were the daily interactions with colleagues and students that had once brought me such joy and fulfillment. Instead, my days were consumed with cleaning, cooking, and running errands, a far cry from the vibrant, purposeful existence I had once known. Whenever I dared to voice my restlessness or suggest taking up a new hobby, Harry's response was always the same, a condescending chuckle and a reminder that his business was the priority. "We can revisit your little hobbies once we're financially stable, dear," he would say with a patronizing pat on the shoulder. Those subtle put-downs and dismissals of my desires gradually chipped away at my sense of self-worth. I began to feel invisible, a mere supporting character in the story of Harry's life. "Sometimes I feel invisible, Liz," I confided in my childhood friend over coffee one afternoon. "Everything is about Harry's needs. It's like my own dreams and aspirations don't matter anymore." Liz, ever the voice of reason, squeezed my hand reassuringly. "Alice, you've made so many sacrifices for that man. Don't let him diminish your value like this. You're a strong, intelligent woman. Never forget that." Her words were a balm to my wounded spirit, but deep down I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that I had somehow failed as a wife, that my inability to meet Harry's every demand was the root cause of his disregard. Little did I know then that his disloyalty ran far deeper than I could have ever imagined. As the truth of his long-term affair with our neighbor Marjorie came to light, those memories took on a new, sickening hue. All those years of self-doubt and sacrifice, only to be cast aside like an old rag when a younger, more enticing option presented itself. The revelation was like a slap in the face, jolting me out of my complacent existence. I realized then that I had been living a lie, a carefully constructed facade orchestrated by Harry to keep me blind to his transgressions. No more. The time for meek acceptance was over. A fire ignited within me, a burning desire to reclaim the dignity and self-respect that he had so callously stripped away. If Harry wanted to discard our marriage like a worn-out garment, then I would ensure he faced the consequences of his actions, no matter how painful or messy the process might be. This was no longer just about salvaging our relationship. That ship had sailed long ago. This was about taking a stand, about proving to Harry, to myself, and to the world that I was no one's doormat. I was Alice, a woman whose strength and resilience had been forged in the fires of betrayal, and I was just getting started. If Harry's betrayal wasn't enough to contend with, my mother-in-law Rita's constant presence only added to the turmoil. That woman had made my life a living hell from the moment I married her precious son. "Alice, dear, can't you do anything right?" she would sneer during one of her frequent, unannounced visits. "Harry's shirts are always so wrinkled." I would bite my tongue, forcing a tight smile as I assured her that I did my best with the laundry. But it was never enough for Rita. No matter how spotless the house, how elaborate the meals, there was always something to criticize, some way to make me feel inadequate. Harry, of course, did nothing to defend me against his mother's relentless jabs. If anything, he seemed to revel in her doting affection, basking in her approval like a spoiled child. "Mother knows best, Alice," he would say with a smug grin. "You should listen to her advice more often." I wanted so desperately to be accepted by Rita, to finally earn her respect and approval. I deluded myself into thinking that if I could just be the perfect wife and daughter-in-law, she would eventually come around. Foolish, naive me. During one particularly tense visit, Rita had taken it upon herself to rearrange the entire kitchen while I was out running errands. When I returned home, she greeted me with a look of utter disdain. "Honestly, Alice, how can you find anything in this mess?" she clucked, gesturing to the cupboards and drawers she had upended. "I've reorganized everything for you. You're welcome." I stared at the chaos she had created, my carefully organized system now in disarray. Anger and frustration bubbled up inside me, but I swallowed it down, forcing a polite, "Thank you, Rita. That was very thoughtful of you." Her lips pursed in a thin, disapproving line. "Well, don't just stand there, dear. This kitchen won't clean itself." And so I would spend the next few hours meticulously putting everything back in its rightful place, all while Rita looked on with a critical eye, offering a steady stream of unsolicited advice. "You really should consider hiring a maid, Alice. This house is always such a mess." "Have you thought about taking a cooking class? Harry deserves better than these bland meals. When are you going to lose that extra weight, dear? You've let yourself go since the wedding." Each barb was like a tiny dagger, chipping away at my already fragile self-esteem. But I endured it all, convincing myself that it was the price I had to pay for keeping the peace in our family. Little did I know that Rita's true loyalties lay not with me, but with her precious son, the son who could do no wrong in her eyes, even as he was carrying on a sordid affair behind my back. As the truth of Harry's deception came to light, I realized with sickening clarity that Rita had known all along. She had turned a blind eye to his infidelity, perhaps even encouraged it in her twisted way. The revelation was like a slap in the face, finally snapping me out of the delusion that I could ever win this woman's approval or affection. All those years of enduring her cruelty, of sacrificing my own dignity in the hopes of appeasing her, were for naught. But as the anger and hurt threatened to consume me, a newfound resolve took root. I was done being the docile, obedient daughter-in-law. It was time for Rita to face the consequences of her actions, to see the true monster she had enabled in her own son. If she thought she could continue to belittle and undermine me, she had another thing coming. This time, I would be the one calling the shots, and neither she nor Harry would be able to stop me from exposing their web of lies and deceit. The gloves were off, and I was just getting started. The revelation of Harry's affair hit me like a ton of bricks, leaving me reeling and gasping for air. How could I have been so blind, so trusting for all these years? "He's been with her for years, Liz," I confided in my best friend through choked sobs. "How did I miss this?" Liz's arms enveloped me in a warm embrace as she gently stroked my hair. "Oh, Alice, I'm so sorry. That bastard doesn't deserve your tears." But the tears kept flowing, a torrent of pent-up emotions finally breaking free. Anger, hurt, shame, they all swirled together in a toxic cocktail, leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. As the initial shock began to subside, flashes of memory assaulted me, each one a glaring neon sign that I had willfully ignored in my desperate bid to preserve the illusion of our happy marriage. The late nights at the office that stretched into early mornings, the sudden interest in hitting the gym and updating his wardrobe, the way his phone would buzz with texts, only for him to quickly silence it and tuck it away. I had chalked it all up to the stress of running his business, convincing myself that his distance was merely a phase, that the solid foundation of our love would see us through. Fool that I was. "How could I have been so stupid, Liz?" I asked, my voice thick with self-loathing. The signs were all there, and I chose to ignore them. Liz cupped my face in her hands, her gaze unwavering. "Listen to me, Alice. This is not your fault. That lying snake is the one to blame, not you." Her words offered little solace as the full weight of Harry's deception crashed over me in waves. This wasn't just a fleeting indiscretion. This was a calculated, years-long betrayal of our vows, our family, our entire life together. And the person he had chosen to betray me with? Our neighbor, Marjorie, a woman nearly 2 decades my junior, with a body straight out of a fitness magazine and a perpetual smirk that now made my skin crawl. How many times had I welcomed that viper into our home, blissfully unaware of the sordid affair unfolding right under my nose? How many times had she and Harry exchanged knowing glances, reveling in their sick game, while I remained the oblivious punchline? The memories came flooding back, each one more damning than the last. Marjorie's overly familiar hugs that lingered a bit too long. The way Harry's eyes would follow her every movement whenever she was around. The hushed conversations that abruptly ceased the moment I entered the room. I felt sick, violated in the most profound way. My home, my sanctuary, had been tainted by their lies and indiscretions. Nowhere was safe from the stench of their betrayal. As the anger took root, it brought with it a newfound determination. I was done being the meek, trusting wife who turned a blind eye to the harsh realities unfolding before her. If Harry wanted to trade me in for a younger model, so be it, but he would damn well face the consequences of his actions. No more hiding, no more lies. It was time to expose their sordid affair for the whole world to see, and I would be the one holding the spotlight. Marjorie and Rita could try to spin it however they liked, but in the end, the truth would prevail. Harry's carefully constructed facade was about to come crumbling down, and I would be standing tall, emboldened by the ashes of his deceit. This was no longer just about salvaging my pride or getting revenge. This was a battle for my very soul, a fight to reclaim the self-worth and dignity that Harry had so callously stripped away. And I had no intention of losing. In the aftermath of Harry's devastating revelation, I found myself adrift, struggling to piece together the shattered fragments of my former life. The woman I had once been, the dutiful wife, the unwavering supporter, felt like a distant memory, a mere ghost haunting the halls of our home. As the initial shock and hurt began to subside, a newfound determination took root within me. I was done being the passive bystander in my own story. It was time to reclaim my power, to rebuild my life on my own terms. The first step was reconnecting with the parts of myself that I had sacrificed for the sake of my marriage. I reached out to old friends I had fallen out of touch with, reigniting bonds that had withered from neglect. Together we rediscovered our shared passions, book clubs, art classes, weekend hikes, all the simple joys I had forsaken in service of Harry's ambitions. With each outing, each rekindled connection, I felt layers of the old Alice being stripped away, revealing a stronger, more vibrant version of myself that I had long suppressed. Gone were the self-doubts and insecurities that Harry had so expertly cultivated. In their place blossomed a newfound confidence, a belief in my own worth that no man could ever diminish. As I immersed myself in this process of self-rediscovery, a plan began to take shape, a subtle, yet potent form of revenge against those who had so callously betrayed me. It started with a chance encounter with Rita, my wretched mother-in-law, at the local grocery store. As she prattled on about some inane family gossip, I couldn't help but notice the smug satisfaction in her eyes, as if she had won some twisted game that I hadn't even been aware we were playing. That's when the truth hit me like a sledgehammer. Rita had known about Harry's affair all along. More than that, she had likely encouraged it, seeing his dalliance with the much younger Marjorie as some sort of twisted validation of her son's virility. "How could you, Rita?" I demanded, cutting her off mid-sentence. "You knew he was cheating and you encouraged it?" Her eyes widened in surprise, but she quickly regained her composure, waving a dismissive hand. "Don't be so dramatic, Alice. Harry's a man with needs. Marjorie is simply better equipped to handle those needs than you are at this stage of life." I recoiled as if she had physically struck me, her words like acid burning through my skin. In that moment, the full depth of their deception became painfully clear. Not only had Harry betrayed me, but Rita, the woman who was supposed to be my family, had been complicit in his lies, enabling his infidelity under the guise of some twisted maternal loyalty. As the anger and hurt threatened to consume me, I forced myself to take a deep breath. Lashing out in a public setting would only give them the satisfaction of seeing me unravel. No, I needed to bide my time, to plot my revenge with surgical precision. And what better way to strike at the heart of their deception than to expose the truth before the entire family? The next big gathering was just a few weeks away, a reunion of sorts, where distant relatives from all corners would converge to celebrate our family's twisted version of togetherness. It would be the perfect stage to unleash the bombshell of Harry's betrayal, to strip away the carefully constructed facade he and Rita had so meticulously maintained. In the days leading up to the event, I could feel my resolve strengthening with each passing hour. This was about more than just getting even with Harry and Rita. This was about reclaiming my dignity, my self-worth, all the precious things they had tried so hard to strip away from me. As I looked in the mirror on the morning of the reunion, I saw a woman reborn. The meek, downtrodden Alice of the past was nowhere to be found. In her place stood a warrior, battle-tested and emboldened by the fires of betrayal. It was time to let the truth reign supreme, consequences be damned. Harry and Rita's web of lies was about to unravel, and I would be the one holding the scissors. The day of the family reunion dawned bright and clear, a cruel juxtaposition to the storm that was brewing within me. As I dressed for the occasion, smoothing the fabric of my crisp blouse, I could feel the weight of my impending revelation pressing down on me like a lead vest. But I was ready. More than ready. This was the moment I had been steeling myself for. The culmination of weeks spent meticulously plotting my revenge. The drive to the reunion site passed in a blur, my knuckles white as I gripped the steering wheel, rehearsing the words I would soon unleash upon my unsuspecting family. Harry and Rita thought they could sweep their betrayal under the rug, carry on as if nothing had happened. Well, they were in for a rude awakening. As I stepped out of the car and made my way towards the gathering, I could already sense the tension in the air. Harry and Marjorie were huddled together in a corner, no doubt reveling in their sordid affair now that it was out in the open. Rita, ever the matriarch, held court with a gaggle of relatives, her false airs of propriety sickening to behold. I took a deep breath, steeling my resolve. This was it. No more hiding, no more lies. "Harry," I called out, my voice trembling ever so slightly with the weight of controlled anger. "Why don't you tell everyone where you're really living now?" The words hung in the air like a lead balloon, and a hush fell over the gathering. All eyes turned towards us, confusion and curiosity etched on their faces. Harry's expression morphed from one of smug indifference to outright panic as the realization of what I was about to do dawned on him. "Alice, don't," he began, but I held up a hand, silencing him. "No, Harry, you don't get to sweep this under the rug anymore. These people deserve to know the truth about the kind of man you really are." I turned to address the assembled crowd, my voice growing stronger with each syllable. For years, Harry has been carrying on an affair with our neighbor Marjorie, and his own mother, Rita, knew about it the entire time. She even encouraged it, telling him it was better for him to be with a younger woman. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd, followed by a torrent of hushed whispers and furtive glances. Harry and Rita stood frozen, their faces drained of color, as the truth they had so desperately tried to conceal was laid bare before their loved ones. "How could you, Harry?" one of his aunts cried out, her voice thick with emotion. "After everything Alice has done for you, for this family? And you, Rita?" another relative chimed in, shaking his head in disgust. "Encouraging your own son's infidelity? Have you no shame?" Rita opened her mouth to respond, no doubt prepared to unleash one of her signature deflections or excuses. But this time, no one was buying it. The veil had been lifted, and her true colors were on full display for all to see. As the accusations and recriminations swirled around us, I felt a profound sense of relief wash over me. The burden of carrying this secret, of shouldering the weight of their betrayal alone, had finally been lifted. And in its place blossomed a newfound sense of empowerment, a knowledge that I had taken control of my own narrative and emerged victorious. Harry and Rita could try to spin it however they liked, but the truth was out there now, reverberating through the family like a shockwave. They would never again be able to hide behind their carefully constructed facade of respectability. As for me, I had reclaimed my voice, my dignity, my very sense of self. The meek, downtrodden Alice of the past was gone, replaced by a woman who had stared down the demons of betrayal and emerged stronger, more resilient than ever before. This was just the beginning, the first step on a journey of healing and self-discovery that would shape the rest of my life. And as I looked around at the stunned faces of my family, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them head-on, unbowed and unbroken. The shackles of my past had been shed, and a new chapter was just beginning. The aftermath of my explosive revelation at the family reunion was like a seismic shockwave rippling through our once tightly knit clan. In the days and weeks that followed, the fractures became increasingly apparent, with allegiances shifting and long-held loyalties called into question. For Harry and Rita, the fallout was swift and unforgiving. What had once been a position of respect and authority within the family quickly devolved into one of ostracization and disdain. Relatives who had once fawned over Harry's success now turned their backs, unable to reconcile the man they thought they knew with the unfaithful cat I had exposed. Rita, too, found herself increasingly isolated, her iron grip on the family's matriarchal reins loosening with each passing day. Her attempts to deflect blame and paint me as the hysterical, scorned woman were met with stony silence or outright rebuke. The veil had been lifted, and her true colors were on full display for all to see. As for me, the initial rush of vindication soon gave way to a profound sense of uncertainty. Having spent so many years suppressing my own desires, my own sense of self-worth, I found myself adrift in this newfound independence, unsure of how to navigate the uncharted waters ahead. It was Liz, my steadfast friend and confidant, who provided the anchor I so desperately needed. "You did the right thing, Alice," she reassured me as we sipped coffee one afternoon, her hand resting atop mine in a comforting gesture. They needed to know the truth, no matter how ugly it was. Her words were a balm to my troubled soul, a reminder that even in the midst of upheaval and uncertainty, I had reclaimed something far more precious than any material possession: my dignity, my voice, my power. Still, the residual pain of Harry's betrayal lingered like a persistent ache, flaring up in unexpected moments. I would catch glimpses of him around town, his once confident swagger now replaced by a hunched, furtive gait, and feel a pang of sadness for the man he had once been, the man I had so foolishly devoted my life to. A part of me still longed for closure, for some semblance of understanding as to how he could have so callously discarded our marriage, our family, for the fleeting thrill of an affair. But whenever he tried to reach out to initiate some form of contact or reconciliation, I rebuffed him, my anger and hurt still too raw to entertain his excuses or platitudes. "Not now, Harry," I would say, my voice firm and unwavering. "I'm not ready." And so we existed in this limbo, two ships passing in the night, each charting our own course through the wreckage of what had once been. He, adrift and rudderless, cast out from the very family he had once prioritized above all else, and me, slowly but surely finding my bearings, guided by an inner strength I had never known existed. It was during this period of transition and self-discovery that the true impact of my actions began to crystallize. What had started as a burning need for revenge, a desire to inflict the same pain and humiliation that Harry and Rita had so callously visited upon me, had blossomed into something far more profound and lasting. Emboldened by my newfound voice, I found myself sought out by other women who had endured similar betrayals, who had been beaten down and stripped of their self-worth by the very men who had sworn to love and cherish them. They looked to me as a beacon of hope, a living embodiment of the resilience and strength they so desperately craved. And so I did what any self-respecting woman in my position would do. I paid it forward, sharing my story and offering guidance and support to those still mired in the depths of their own personal hells. It started small, just a few of us gathering in each other's homes, swapping tales of woe and hard-won wisdom over cups of tea and plates of pastries. But word soon spread, and before long, our little support group had blossomed into a full-fledged movement, a sisterhood of survivors bound by the shared experience of betrayal and the unshakable resolve to rise above it. As I looked around the room during one of our meetings, taking in the faces of these remarkable women, I felt a profound sense of pride and purpose. We had all been through hell, enduring unimaginable pain and heartbreak at the hands of those who were supposed to cherish us most. Yet here we stood, battered but unbroken, our spirits forged in the fires of adversity. "We've all been through hell," I said, raising my cup in a silent toast, "but we're still standing, stronger than ever." A chorus of murmured assent rippled through the group, a shared acknowledgement of the long, arduous journey that had brought us to this point. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges and setbacks that we could scarcely fathom, but we would face them head-on, bolstered by the bonds of sisterhood and the knowledge that our worth extended far beyond the transient affections of any one man. This was about more than just getting back at Harry and Rita. more than just settling some petty score. This was about reclaiming our power, our agency, our fundamental right to exist as complete, self-actualized beings, unbeholden to the whims and desires of those who sought to diminish us. And in that moment, as I looked around at the faces of my fellow warriors, I knew that no matter what lay ahead, we would emerge victorious. The shackles of our past had been shed, and a new dawn was breaking. A dawn ushered in by the indomitable spirit of women who had stared into the abyss and refused to blink. The months following my public exposure of Harry and Rita's betrayal were a whirlwind of change and self-discovery. As the dust settled and the initial shockwaves subsided, I found myself standing at a crossroads, faced with the daunting task of charting a new course for my life. The decision to leave our family home, the place that had once represented the bedrock of my existence, was not an easy one. But with each passing day spent within those walls, I was haunted by the ghosts of my former self, the meek, subservient wife who had sacrificed her dreams and aspirations on the altar of Harry's ambition. No, if I was to truly embrace this newfound lease on life, I needed to forge ahead on my own terms, unburdened by the weight of past traumas and regrets. And so, with Liz's unwavering support, I set out to find a place that could serve as the foundation for this next chapter. A cozy little apartment that, while modest, felt more like a sanctuary than the gilded cage I had once called home. As I unpacked my belongings, carefully arranging each item in its new resting place, I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of liberation. Gone were the trappings of my former life, the material excesses that Harry had so valued above all else. In their place stood the building blocks of a life truly my own, a blank canvas awaiting the brushstrokes of my newfound independence. It was during those early days of settling into my new abode that the seeds of a greater purpose began to take root. Through the grapevine of our close-knit community, word of my defiant stand against Harry and Rita's duplicity had spread like wildfire, igniting a spark of hope and inspiration in other women who had endured similar betrayals. At first, it was just a trickle. A few tentative knocks on my door, followed by hushed conversations over cups of tea as they unburdened themselves of their own harrowing tales of infidelity and emotional abuse. But soon that trickle became a steady stream, a veritable flood of kindred spirits seeking solace and guidance from one who had walked the same thorny path. And so I did what any self-respecting woman in my position would do. I opened my doors wide, inviting them in and offering a safe haven where they could share their stories without fear of judgment or reprisal. Before long, what had started as informal gatherings in my living room blossomed into a full-fledged support group, a sisterhood of survivors bound by the shared experience of betrayal and the unshakable resolve to rise above it. Our meetings became a sacred ritual, a chance to shed the masks we so often wore in public and bare our souls to those who truly understood the depths of our pain. We laughed together, cried together, and most importantly, we healed together, drawing strength from the bonds of sisterhood that transcended any one individual's plight. We've all been through hell, I would say, raising my cup in a silent toast as I looked around the room at the faces of these remarkable women. But we're still standing, stronger than ever. And it was true. Though our paths had been paved with heartache and suffering, we refused to be defined by the actions of the men who had sought to diminish us. Instead, we emerged from the ashes of our former lives like phoenixes, our spirits tempered by the fires of adversity, and our resolve forged in the crucible of betrayal. As the weeks turned to months, our little group continued to grow, attracting women from all walks of life who had been touched by the scourge of infidelity. And with each new member, the bonds of our sisterhood grew stronger, a tapestry woven from the threads of our shared experiences and collective resilience. It was during one of our meetings, as I looked around at the faces of these incredible women, that the true magnitude of my journey hit me with the force of a tidal wave. Here I was, a woman who had once been content to exist in the shadow of her husband, now standing at the helm of a movement dedicated to empowering and uplifting those who had endured similar trials. The transformation was complete. I was no longer defined by my marriage or the actions of the man who had so callously discarded me. Instead, I had become a beacon of hope, a living embodiment of the strength and resilience that lay dormant within each of us, waiting to be unleashed. As I reflected on the winding path that had brought me to this point, I felt a profound sense of pride and purpose. What had begun as a burning need for revenge, a desire to inflict the same pain and humiliation that Harry and Rita had visited upon me, had blossomed into something far greater, a mission to heal and uplift, to ensure that no woman ever again had to endure the soul-crushing anguish of betrayal alone. This was about more than just settling scores or exacting revenge. This was about reclaiming our power, our agency, our fundamental right to exist as complete, self-actualized beings, unbeholden to the whims and desires of those who sought to diminish us. And as I looked around at the faces of my fellow warriors, I knew that our journey was far from over. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges and setbacks, but we would face them head-on, bolstered by the bonds of sisterhood and the knowledge that our worth extended far beyond the transient affections of any one man. The shackles of our past had been shed, and a new dawn was breaking. A dawn ushered in by the indomitable spirit of women who had stared into the abyss and refused to blink. The summer sun beat down on us as we loaded our bags into the SUV, ready for our long-awaited family trip. Richard, my husband of 35 years, barked orders like a drill sergeant. "Joanna, make sure you pack the cooler with enough drinks and snacks for the drive, and don't forget the maps and directions." I bit my tongue, resisting the urge to remind him that I'd been planning this trip for months. As usual, he assumed I'd handle all the logistics while he reaped the rewards. Sylvia, Richard's mother, emerged from the house, her face pinched in disapproval. "Are we ready to go yet? You know how I hate waiting." I forced a smile. "Just about. Michael and Rebecca should be here any minute." As if on cue, my son and daughter-in-law pulled into the driveway. Michael gave me a sympathetic look, well aware of the tension between his father and me. We piled into the SUV, and I settled into the passenger seat, ready for the long drive ahead. But as we merged onto the highway, I overheard a hushed conversation from the back. "Once we're settled at the cabin, we'll have that talk with Joanna," Sylvia murmured to Richard. My heart sank. Talk? What were they planning? Richard's voice was low, but I caught the gist. "It's for the best, Mother. She'll never see it coming." "See what coming?" A knot formed in my stomach as I realized they were conspiring against me on what was supposed to be a joyful family vacation. The drive passed in tense silence, punctuated only by Sylvia's occasional snide remarks. By the time we reached the cabin, my nerves were frayed. As we unloaded our bags, Richard pulled me aside. "Joanna, we need to talk." I steeled myself, determined not to show weakness. "About what?" He glanced around, his expression guarded. "Not here. Let's go for a walk." We strolled along a nearby trail, the evening shadows lengthening around us. Finally, Richard spoke. "Mother and I have been discussing our living situation. With her health declining, she needs more care than I can provide on my own." I nodded, unsure where this was leading. "We've decided it would be best if she moved in with us permanently. That way, you can take care of her needs." My jaw dropped. "You expect me to become a full-time caregiver for your mother, without even consulting me?" Richard's eyes hardened. "It's the logical solution. You're retired and I'm still working. Who else is going to do it?" I shook my head in disbelief. "And what about my needs, Richard? Don't those matter at all?" He scoffed. "Don't be so dramatic. This is what families do. We take care of each other." But his words rang hollow. In that moment, I realized our marriage had become a sham, a facade of obligation rather than love or respect. As we returned to the cabin, Sylvia greeted us with a smug smile. She knew exactly what was happening, and she relished her victory. That night, as I lay awake in the unfamiliar bed, my mind raced. How had I let things spiral so far out of control? When had I stopped being Richard's partner and become little more than a servant? I thought of the dreams I'd once had, traveling, pursuing hobbies, enjoying my retirement. All of it had been sacrificed on the altar of duty and obligation. But as the first rays of dawn peeked through the curtains, a newfound determination took root within me. I would no longer be a passive bystander in my own life. It was time to take a stand. The cabin's rustic charm did little to soothe my frayed nerves as we settled in for the night. Richard and Sylvia acted as if nothing was amiss, chatting amiably about the scenic views and plans for hiking the next day. Their nonchalance only fueled my growing sense of unease. After dinner, I excused myself and retreated to the bedroom I was sharing with Richard. Closing the door behind me, I sank onto the edge of the bed, my mind racing. What were they plotting against me? And why? Memories flooded back. The countless times I'd put my own dreams on hold to cater to Richard's needs, the way Sylvia had always treated me like an intruder in her precious son's life. Had I been so blinded by a misguided sense of duty that I'd missed the cracks in our family's foundation? A muffled voice from the living room snapped me out of my reverie. I strained to listen, recognizing Richard's hushed tones. "Can't go on like this, Mother. She's become a burden." My heart pounded in my ears as Sylvia's raspy voice responded. "I told you she was never good enough for my son. We need to take action before it's too late." Take action? A chill ran down my spine. Were they planning to get rid of me somehow? I crept closer to the door, pressing my ear against the wood. Their voices grew clearer, the words like knives twisting in my gut. "We'll have to be discreet," Richard murmured. "Michael can never find out the truth." My son's name sent a jolt through me. They were going to lie to him, to turn him against me. Tears stung my eyes as I realized the depth of their betrayal. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen in shock and disbelief. When Richard finally entered the bedroom, his expression was carefully neutral. "You should get some rest," he said, avoiding my gaze. "Big day tomorrow." I watched him disappear into the bathroom, my mind whirling. I couldn't confront him, not yet. Not until I had a plan. That night, as Richard's soft snores filled the room, I lay awake, plotting my next move. I would not go down without a fight. These people who claimed to be my family had shown their true colors, and it was time I did the same. As the first rays of dawn peeked through the curtains, I felt a newfound sense of determination. No more playing the dutiful wife and mother. From now on, I would be the master of my own destiny. Over breakfast, I studied Richard and Sylvia, watching for any hint of their sinister intentions, but they maintained their facade of normalcy, discussing the day's activities as if nothing were amiss. "I thought we could go for a hike this morning," Richard suggested, his tone deceptively casual. "Get some fresh air before the heat sets in." I forced a smile, playing along for now. "Sounds lovely." As we set off into the woods, I hung back, allowing Richard and Sylvia to take the lead. Michael and Rebecca trailed behind, their hushed conversation a comforting backdrop. Sylvia's voice carried back to me, sharp and condescending. "Honestly, Richard, I don't know how you put up with her. She's dead weight, dragging you down." My fists clenched at her cruel words, but I remained silent, biding my time. Richard's response was muffled, but I caught the gist. "Don't worry, Mother. Soon she'll be out of our lives for good." A wave of anger washed over me, hot and consuming. How dare they? After everything I'd sacrificed, this was how they repaid me. In that moment, a plan began to take shape in my mind. A plan for revenge, for justice. They thought they could cast me aside like an unwanted burden? Well, they had another thing coming. As we reached a scenic overlook, I hung back, allowing the others to admire the view. While their backs were turned, I slipped away, retracing our steps back toward the cabin. It was time to take control of my life, once and for all. I watched Richard and Sylvia disappear down the hiking trail, their voices fading into the distance. As soon as they were out of sight, I sprang into action, hurrying back to the cabin. My heart pounded as I slipped inside, scanning the living area for any sign of their belongings. A leather briefcase sat on the coffee table, and I recognized it as Richard's. Without hesitation, I unzipped it, rifling through the contents. Financial statements, legal documents, and letters. My breath caught in my throat as I unfolded one, the looping handwriting unmistakably feminine. The words leapt off the page, searing into my brain. "My dearest Richard, our stolen moments together are all that sustain me." I stumbled back, the room spinning around me. An affair? After all these years of loyalty and sacrifice, he'd been unfaithful? Bile rose in my throat as I continued reading, the sordid details laying bare the depth of his betrayal. And there were more letters, each one more damning than the last. Tears blurred my vision as I turned to the financial records, my hands trembling. Line after line of unexplained expenditures and hidden accounts. proof that Richard had been bleeding our savings dry right under my nose. The sound of laughter drifted in from outside, and I froze, panic gripping me. Michael and Rebecca must have returned from the hike. I had to act fast. Snatching up the incriminating evidence, I raced to the bedroom and began stuffing my belongings into a suitcase. My mind raced, formulating a plan. I couldn't confront Richard and Sylvia here, not with Michael caught in the crossfire. No, I needed to get away, to gather my strength and decide my next move. As I zipped up the suitcase, a familiar voice called out from the living room. "Mom, are you in here?" "Michael?" My heart clenched at the concern in his tone. He deserved to know the truth, but not yet. Not until I was ready to face the fallout. "I'm just resting, honey," I called back, willing my voice to remain steady. "I'll be out in a bit." Silence, then the murmur of Rebecca's soothing tones as she ushered him away. Bless that girl for her intuition. With shaking hands, I scribbled a hasty note, tucking it into Richard's briefcase along with the damning evidence. Then, gripping my suitcase tightly, I slipped out the back door and into the waiting rental car. As I peeled out of the driveway, I caught a glimpse of Michael and Rebecca on the porch, their expressions puzzled. A pang of guilt twisted in my gut, but I pushed it aside. They would understand in time. For now, I had a mission: to gather the strength and resources I'd need to bring my husband and his vile mother to their knees. They thought they could discard me like a worn-out rag? Well, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The miles stretched out before me, and with each one I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. No more playing the dutiful wife, the obedient daughter-in-law. From this moment on, I would be the master of my own destiny. And Richard and Sylvia? They were going to pay for every single slight, every betrayal, every ounce of disrespect they'd heaped upon me over the years. I would see to that, no matter what it took. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I allowed a grim smile to crease my lips. The game was on, and they had no idea what was coming for them. I drove in a daze, the miles blurring together as I put distance between myself and that wretched cabin. My hands shook on the steering wheel, a potent mix of anger and adrenaline coursing through my veins. How could he? How could Richard betray me like this after everything we'd been through? The letters burned in my mind, their sordid details searing into my brain like acid. And Sylvia, that vile woman, had been in on it the whole time, no doubt reveling in my humiliation. Well, they were going to regret the day they ever crossed me. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, I pulled into a nondescript motel, my body thrumming with nervous energy. I needed to regroup, to formulate a plan for my next move. The dingy room did little to calm my frayed nerves, but I forced myself to take deep breaths, willing my racing heart to slow. Sinking onto the sagging mattress, I reached for my phone with trembling fingers. Richard's number glared back at me from the screen, and a bitter laugh escaped my lips. Oh, how the tables had turned. No more would I be the obedient little wife scurrying to answer his every beck and call. This time, he would be the one squirming, forced to face the consequences of his actions. The phone rang, and rang, and rang. Just as I was about to hang up, his gruff voice crackled over the line. "Joanna, where the hell are you? Your son is worried sick." I bristled at his tone, that familiar mix of condescension and entitlement. Not anymore. "Save it, Richard," I spat. "I know everything. About the affairs, the money you've been siphoning off. I have proof." Silence, thick and heavy, stretched between us. Then a low chuckle that sent ice shooting through my veins. "So what?" he sneered. "You really think anyone will believe the ramblings of a bitter, delusional old woman?" White-hot rage licked at my insides, but I forced myself to remain calm, to keep my voice level. "I'm not the one who's delusional, Richard. You and your mother have been playing me for a fool for far too long. Well, those days are over." Another pause, and when he spoke again, his words were laced with venom. "You ungrateful bitch, after everything I've done for you, for this family? You're going to regret this." A harsh laugh burst from my lips. "No, Richard, you're the one who's going to regret it. Every single lie, every betrayal, every ounce of disrespect you've heaped upon me. You're going to pay for it all. I promise you that." His response was a torrent of profanity and vitriol, but I barely heard it. A sense of grim determination had settled over me, hardening my resolve. "Don't bother coming after me," I warned, cutting off his tirade. And if you know what's good for you, you'll keep your distance from our son. This is just the beginning, Richard. The gloves are off now." With that, I ended the call, a strange sense of calm washing over me. For the first time in decades, I felt in control of my own destiny. Grabbing a pen and paper, I began to make a list: names, numbers, resources. I would need allies in the battle to come, people I could trust to have my back. Jane, my oldest and dearest friend, would be the first. She'd been urging me to leave Richard for years, and I knew she would be in my corner without question. Next, a lawyer, a shark in the courtroom who could help me navigate the legal quagmire that was sure to come. I had evidence of Richard's misdeeds, but I would need an expert to ensure it stuck. As the list grew, I felt a newfound sense of purpose taking root within me. No more would I be the downtrodden, disrespected wife. Richard and Sylvia had awoken a sleeping giant, and they were about to feel the full force of my wrath. A grim smile tugged at my lips as I made the final entry on the list. Michael. My son. My rock. The one person in that twisted family who had always had my back. It was time to bring him into the fold, to let him know that the games were over. Together, we would take down the Machiavellian forces that had been working to destroy us. And when the dust settled, well, let's just say Richard and Sylvia would be the ones regretting the day they ever crossed Joanna Henderson. I pulled up to Michael and Rebecca's cozy bungalow, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it. The moment of truth. Would my son understand the agonizing decision I'd made, or would he side with his father, blinded by years of manipulation? Taking a deep breath, I gathered my things and made my way to the front door, my knuckles rapping against the weathered wood. Seconds ticked by like hours before Rebecca's smiling face appeared. "Joanna, we were so worried when you took off like that. Come in, come in." Her cheerful demeanor faltered as she took in my haggard appearance, the suitcase clutched in my white-knuckled grip. "Is everything okay?" I opened my mouth to respond, but the words stuck in my throat. Michael's concerned voice drifted in from the living room. "Mom, is that you?" He rounded the corner, and I saw the moment the truth dawned on him. The suitcase, my red-rimmed eyes, the grim set of my jaw. His expression shifted from confusion to dread. "What's going on? Where's Dad?" Rebecca laid a gentle hand on his arm, her gaze flicking between us. "Why don't we all sit down?" We settled onto the plush sofa, an oppressive silence hanging in the air. Michael's eyes bored into me, pleading for an explanation. Drawing a shaky breath, I began to speak, the words tumbling out in a torrent. "Your father, he's been unfaithful, Michael, for years, by the looks of it. And not just that, he's been bleeding our finances dry, funneling money into secret accounts." Michael's brow furrowed as he processed my words. "What? That can't be right. Dad would never." His voice trailed off as I pulled out the crumpled letters, the bank statements detailing the missing funds. Wordlessly, I handed them over, watching as his eyes scanned the damning evidence. "Oh, Mom." His shoulders slumped, and I saw the exact moment the truth hit him, like a physical blow. "I'm so sorry." Tears pricked my eyes, but I blinked them away, straightening my spine. "That's not all, honey. Your grandmother was in on it. They were planning to force me out, to make me your father's full-time caregiver while he carried on with God knows who." Rebecca's sharp intake of breath was the only sound in the room as Michael digested this latest bombshell. His expression darkened, and I recognized the flicker of anger in his eyes. Anger on my behalf. "Those bastards," he muttered, his fists clenching. "How could they do this to you, to our family?" I reached out, covering his hand with mine. "It doesn't matter now. What's done is done. I've made my decision. I'm leaving your father. I can't live like that anymore, constantly disrespected and manipulated." A muscle ticked in Michael's jaw as he processed my words. I could see the war raging within him, the desire to support me, battling against years of ingrained loyalty to his father. Finally, he met my gaze, his eyes shining with a fierce determination that made my heart swell with pride. "You're right, Mom. This ends now. Dad and Grandma," he shook his head, jaw clenched. "They've gone too far this time. I'm with you, 100%. Whatever you need, I'm here." A weight lifted from my shoulders as Rebecca nodded her agreement, squeezing Michael's hand. In that moment, I knew everything would be okay. With my son and his wife in my corner, I could weather any storm Richard and Sylvia threw my way. Reaching out, I pulled Michael into a fierce embrace, blinking back grateful tears. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for believing me, for having my back." As I held my son close, I felt a newfound sense of strength coursing through me. The path ahead would be rocky, but I was no longer alone. With Michael and Rebecca by my side, I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Richard and Sylvia had made a grave miscalculation. They had underestimated the bond between a mother and her child, and now they would pay the price for their betrayal. The war had begun, and I had no intention of losing. With Michael and Rebecca's unwavering support, I felt a newfound sense of strength and determination. It was time to reclaim my life, to shed the shackles of Richard and Sylvia's manipulation once and for all. The first order of business was finding a place of my own, a sanctuary where I could begin to heal and plan my next steps. Michael insisted on helping me search, and within a week, we'd found the perfect little apartment in a quiet neighborhood. As I unpacked my belongings, filling the bare shelves and walls with pieces of my life, a weight seemed to lift from my shoulders. This was my space, my refuge from the toxicity that had plagued me for far too long. Of course, Richard didn't take my departure lying down. He showed up at Michael's doorstep, red-faced and bellowing, demanding to know where I was. "She's your mother, for God's sake," he raged at Michael. "You're supposed to be loyal to your family, not that ungrateful harpy." But Michael stood firm, his jaw set in that stubborn line I knew so well. "Mom's the only family I need right now. You and Grandma have done enough damage." Richard's eyes narrowed, and I could see the gears turning in his mind, searching for a way to regain control. "Don't be so quick to judge, son. You haven't heard the full story." "I've heard enough," Michael shot back. "Mom showed me the letters, the bank statements. I know exactly what kind of man you are." For a moment, Richard faltered, his bravado slipping. Then his expression hardened, and he jabbed a finger in Michael's face. "Mark my words, you're going to regret this. When your mother's lies come crashing down around her, don't come crawling back to me." With that, he turned on his heel and stormed off, leaving a ringing silence in his wake. Michael's shoulders slumped, and I could see the toll this was taking on him. Crossing the room, I pulled him into a fierce hug. "Thank you," I murmured. "Thank you for standing by me." He returned the embrace, his voice thick with emotion. "Always, Mom. I'm with you till the end." In the weeks that followed, I focused on settling into my new life, unpacking, decorating, exploring my neighborhood. With each passing day, I felt a little more like myself, the weight of Richard and Sylvia's toxicity slowly lifting from my shoulders. Of course, they didn't make it easy. Richard bombarded me with calls and texts, alternating between pleading for me to come home and hurling vicious insults. Sylvia was no better, leaving scathing voicemails that made my blood boil. But I stood firm, bolstered by Michael and Rebecca's constant support. I knew that if I wavered, even for a moment, Richard would seize the opportunity to reel me back in, and I refused to let that happen. Not after everything I'd been through. The final straw came a few months later when Michael called me in a panic. "Mom, you need to get over here. Dad's gone off the deep end." I raced over to find Richard ranting and raving on Michael's doorstep, his face contorted with rage. "You're making a huge mistake, siding with that lying witch," he spat as I approached. "She's poisoned you against your own family." Sylvia hovered nearby, wringing her hands and shooting me venomous glares. For once, I felt no fear, only a simmering anger at the way they continued to try and manipulate us. Planting myself in front of Richard, I met his glare head-on. "That's enough. You've had your chance to tell your side of the story, and Michael hasn't bought your lies. It's over, Richard. We're done." His face purpled with rage, and for a moment I thought he might strike me. But Michael stepped forward, his broad frame imposing. "You heard her, Dad. It's time for you to leave, and if you can't respect our decisions, you're no longer welcome here." The fight seemed to go out of Richard all at once. His shoulders slumped, and he shot me one last withering glare. "Have it your way, but don't come crying to me when this all blows up in your face." As he and Sylvia retreated, I felt an immense sense of relief wash over me. That chapter of my life was finally closed, the shackles of their manipulation broken for good. Turning to Michael, I pulled him into a fierce hug, blinking back grateful tears. "Thank you," I whispered, "for everything." He held me close, his voice thick with emotion. "You've got nothing to thank me for, Mom. You're the strongest person I know." And in that moment, I knew it was true. Richard and Sylvia had done their damnedest to break me, but I had emerged from the ashes, stronger and more resilient than ever before. At long last, I was free. With Richard and Sylvia finally out of our lives, Michael, Rebecca, and I were able to find some semblance of peace. But I knew it wouldn't last, not with the way they had been carrying on. Sooner or later, they would try to reassert their twisted control over the family. My chance for closure came a few months later, when Emma's 85th birthday rolled around. Despite the strained relations, Sylvia still expected the entire clan to gather and celebrate. I could only imagine the venom she would spew if Michael and I failed to show. Part of me wanted to take the high road, to let the past be the past. But a larger part, the part that had endured decades of disrespect and manipulation, craved justice. This would be my opportunity to expose Richard and Sylvia's misdeeds before the entire family. So with Michael and Rebecca's support, I agreed to attend the party. As we made our way to Sylvia's sprawling estate, I could feel the tension crackling in the air, thick as soup. Emma greeted us at the door, her perpetual sneer firmly in place. "Well, well, if it isn't the prodigal daughter-in-law," she sneered. "I must say, you've got a nerve showing your face here after the way you've treated my sister." I opened my mouth to respond, but Michael beat me to it, his voice low and dangerous. "That's enough, Aunt Emma. We're here to celebrate your birthday, not listen to your venom." Her eyes widened at his tone, but she stepped aside, allowing us to pass. The gathering was already in full swing, with clusters of well-heeled guests milling about, sipping cocktails and making polite small talk. Sylvia spotted us immediately, her face contorting into a rictus of rage. She started toward us, no doubt intending to unleash a torrent of abuse, but Richard caught her arm, whispering urgently in her ear. For a moment, I thought they might cause a scene right then and there. But Sylvia seemed to rein in her temper, shooting me a look of pure venom before plastering on a sickly sweet smile. "Joanna, darling, how lovely of you to join us," she simpered, her voice dripping with false sincerity. "And Michael, Rebecca, we're just delighted to have you here." The undercurrent of menace was palpable, but I refused to be cowed. Lifting my chin, I met her gaze head-on. "Thank you for the invitation, Sylvia. It's been too long since we've all gotten together as a family." Her eyes narrowed at my pointed emphasis on the word family, but she said nothing. Richard, however, couldn't resist taking a jab. "Yes, well, some of us have a rather skewed definition of what family means, don't we, dear?" The barb was clearly aimed at me, but I refused to rise to the bait. Instead, I excused myself, making my way toward the bar. If I was going to drop this bombshell, I needed a drink first. As the evening wore on, I bided my time, watching as Richard and Sylvia worked the room, schmoozing and preening like the arrogant snobs they were. Emma, too, held court from her throne-like chair, lording over the proceedings with her usual disdain. Finally, as the cake was being served, I saw my opportunity. Rising from my seat, I clinked my glass, calling for attention. "If I could have everyone's attention, please." The room fell silent, all eyes turning toward me. Richard and Sylvia's expressions were guarded, but I could see the unease flickering in their eyes. Drawing a deep breath, I began to speak, my voice ringing out loud and clear. "I want to thank Emma for including me in this wonderful celebration. It's been far too long since we've all been together as a family." I paused, letting the weight of that word sink in. Sylvia's eyes narrowed, but I pressed on. "Of course, I use that term loosely, because while we may be bound by blood and marriage, the sad truth is that this family has been rotting from the inside for years." A shocked murmur rippled through the crowd, and I saw Richard tense, his face flushing an angry crimson. But I was on a roll now, the words pouring forth in an unstoppable torrent. "You see, for decades I've endured the cruelty and manipulation of my dear husband and mother-in-law, the emotional abuse, the financial betrayals, the utter lack of respect for me as a human being." Gasps and scandalized whispers filled the air as I laid it all bare. The affairs, the hidden bank accounts, their plans to force me into indentured servitude as Richard's caregiver. By the time I finished, Sylvia's face was ashen, her carefully cultivated facade crumbling around her. Richard, too, looked shell-shocked, as if he couldn't quite believe I'd had the audacity to expose his sins before his entire social circle. For a long, charged moment, the room was utterly silent. Then, like a dam bursting, the outrage and condemnation came pouring forth. "How could you, Richard? Sylvia, you wretched woman! And to think we welcomed you into our homes!" The voices swirled around us, a cacophony of judgment and disdain. Sylvia shrank back, her eyes darting wildly, searching for an ally, a friendly face. But there were none. Even Emma had turned her back, her lips pursed in a thin, disapproving line. As the tumult raged on, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The shackles of shame and secrecy had finally been cast off, the truth laid bare for all to see. Crossing the room, I came to stand before Richard and Sylvia, looking them square in the eye. "It's over," I said, my voice low but unwavering. "Your lies, your manipulations, they've all been exposed. You have no power over me or this family any longer." Sylvia opened her mouth, no doubt to hurl some scathing insult or empty threat. But the words seemed to die in her throat as she took in the scene around her, the accusatory glares, the whispers of disdain. In that moment, I saw the fight go out of her, that indomitable spirit finally broken. She was a fallen queen, her reign of terror at an end. Turning on my heel, I strode from the room, head held high, Michael and Rebecca at my side. As we emerged into the cool evening air, I felt an immense weight lift from my shoulders. At long last, I was free of their toxic influence, their twisted games. And while the road ahead would be long, I knew that I would walk it with strength and dignity, unbowed and unbroken. Revenge, as they say, is a dish best served cold, and oh, how sweet it tasted. In the aftermath of Emma's disastrous birthday party, a strange sense of calm settled over me. For the first time in decades, I was free from the constant weight of Richard and Sylvia's manipulation, their toxic influence finally purged from my life. Of course, they didn't go quietly into that good night. Richard bombarded me with calls and emails, alternating between groveling pleas for forgiveness and vitriolic tirades against my supposed betrayal. Sylvia, too, made her fair share of attempts to reassert her control, leaving scathing voicemails that I promptly deleted without listening. But I was done engaging with their drama, their twisted mind games. I had laid bare the truth for all to see, and in doing so, I had regained my power, my sense of self-worth. With Michael and Rebecca's support, I focused on building a new life for myself, one free from the shackles of my past. I found a quaint little apartment in a charming neighborhood, filling it with pieces that brought me joy. Fresh flowers, cozy throws, framed photos of happier times. And as the weeks turned to months, I began to venture out, to rediscover the world beyond the confines of my toxic marriage. I joined a book club at the local library, losing myself in the stories of other resilient women who had faced and overcome their own struggles. I volunteered at a nearby soup kitchen, finding solace in the simple act of serving others. Slowly but surely, I began to heal, to reclaim the parts of myself that had been buried for far too long. The anger and bitterness that had once consumed me gave way to a newfound sense of peace, of contentment. Of course, Michael and Rebecca were a constant source of strength and support throughout this journey. They insisted on regular family dinners, filling my little apartment with the sounds of laughter and love. And when Rebecca gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, I was there every step of the way, reveling in the joy of becoming a grandmother. As I cradled that tiny bundle in my arms, gazing into her innocent eyes, I made a silent vow. This child would never know the pain and manipulation that had plagued my own family. She would grow up surrounded by love and respect, her spirit nurtured and cherished. In those quiet moments, rocking my granddaughter to sleep, I found a sense of peace and purpose that had eluded me for far too long. This was what truly mattered, not the petty squabbles or toxic power plays, but the simple joys of family, of unconditional love. And if Richard and Sylvia ever dared to darken our doorstep again, to try and taint this newfound happiness with their venom, well, they would quickly learn that I was no longer the meek, downtrodden woman they had once taken such delight in tormenting. No, I was a phoenix risen from the ashes of my past, stronger and more resilient than ever before. And I would protect this fragile new life with every fiber of my being, come what may. As the years passed, Richard and Sylvia's attempts at contact grew fewer and farther between. Whether they had finally accepted defeat or simply moved on to tormenting some other poor soul, I neither knew nor cared. They were ghosts of my past, shadows that held no power over me any longer. My focus remained firmly on the present, on cherishing each precious moment with my son, my daughter-in-law, and my beautiful granddaughter. We became a tight-knit clan, bound not by blood or obligation, but by a deep, abiding love and respect. And in those quiet moments, as I watched my family blossom and thrive, I knew that I had won the ultimate victory. Not through rage or vengeance, but through the simple act of living my life on my own terms, unbowed and unbroken. Richard and Sylvia had tried their damnedest to crush my spirit, to strip me of my dignity and self-worth. But in the end it was their hatred, their pettiness, that had withered and died like a noxious weed starved of sunlight. As for me, I had risen from the ashes, a towering lily in full bloom, my fragrance carrying on the wind as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. And that, I knew, was the greatest revenge of all. "Eve, I can't believe you didn't see it coming," Sophia whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Dad's been lying to all of us." I stood there, frozen, as my daughter's words sank in. The phone in my hand felt heavy, the dial tone echoing in my ear. I had just overheard my husband, Derek, arranging to move his mother, Martha, into a lavish nearby condo without my knowledge, using our hard-earned savings. For years I had dedicated myself to my family, balancing my work as a nurse with the constant demands and complaints of my overbearing mother-in-law. I thought I was doing the right thing, keeping the peace, but now it seemed like a cruel joke. "Mom, are you okay?" Sophia asked, her voice laced with concern. I forced a smile, trying to reassure her. "I'm fine, honey. Just a little surprised, that's all." But the truth was, I was far from fine. As I went about my daily routine, my mind raced with questions. How long had Derek been planning this? Why didn't he tell me? And most importantly, what else was he hiding? The day dragged on, each minute feeling like an eternity. I mechanically went through the motions at work, my thoughts consumed by the betrayal. As I drove home, I steeled myself for the inevitable confrontation. I found Derek in the living room, casually reading the newspaper as if nothing had happened. Martha sat nearby, a smug smile on her face. "Derek, we need to talk," I said, my voice trembling slightly. He looked up, his expression a mix of surprise and annoyance. "Can it wait, Eve? I'm in the middle of something." "No, it can't wait," I replied, my resolve growing stronger. "I know about the condo, Derek. How could you do this without telling me?" Martha interjected, her voice dripping with false concern. "Eve, dear, it's not a big deal. Derek just wants to make sure I'm comfortable in my golden years." I ignored her, focusing on my husband. "Derek, we're supposed to be a team. You can't just make decisions like this without me." He sighed, folding the newspaper. "Eve, you're overreacting. It's just a little investment, nothing to worry about." "A little investment?" I scoffed. "Derek, that's our savings. We were supposed to use that money for our future, for our children's education." "Don't be so dramatic," Martha chimed in. "Derek knows what he's doing. You should trust him." I felt my blood boil. Trust him? How could I trust a man who went behind my back, who put his mother's desires above our family's welfare? "I can't do this right now," I said, grabbing my purse. "I need some air." I stormed out of the house, my heart pounding in my chest. I drove aimlessly, tears blurring my vision. Before I knew it, I found myself at Aunt Grace's restaurant, the one place where I always felt safe and understood. As I walked in, the familiar scent of home-cooked meals and the warmth of Aunt Grace's smile enveloped me. She took one look at my tear-stained face and ushered me into the back room. "What's wrong, Eve?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. I poured out my heart, telling her everything. The condo, the lies, the betrayal. She listened patiently, her hand gently squeezing mine. "Oh, Eve," she sighed, "I'm so sorry you're going through this, but you're strong and you're not alone. We'll figure this out together." As I sat there, surrounded by the love and support of my aunt, I felt a glimmer of hope. I knew the road ahead would be tough, but with Aunt Grace by my side, I felt like I could face anything, even the betrayal of the man I once loved. As I sat in Aunt Grace's restaurant, my mind drifted back to the early years of my marriage to Derek. I remembered the way he swept me off my feet with his charm and charisma, how we'd dance in the kitchen to our favorite songs, lost in our own little world. But even then, The cracks were starting to show. Martha, Derek's mother, had always been a domineering presence in our lives. At first, I tried to brush it off, telling myself that she just wanted what was best for her son. But as the years went by, her influence grew, and I found myself constantly competing for Derek's attention and affection. I thought back to the day we brought Luke home from the hospital, how Martha had insisted on staying with us to help out. She took over the nursery, rearranging everything to her liking and criticizing my every move as a new mother. I felt like a stranger in my own home, always second-guessing myself. As Luke grew older, he developed a passion for music. He'd spend hours locked away in his room, strumming his guitar and writing songs. But Derek, ever the pragmatist, saw it as a waste of time. He wanted Luke to follow in his footsteps, to become a successful businessman like him. I tried to support Luke's dreams, but it was an uphill battle. Every time I defended him, Martha would swoop in, reminding me of my place. "Eve, dear," she'd say, her voice dripping with condescension, you don't understand that the world works. Let Derek handle this." And then there was Sophia, my fiery, independent daughter. She was always butting heads with her father and grandmother, refusing to conform to their expectations. I admired her spirit, but I worried about the toll it was taking on her. I remembered one particularly heated argument between Sophia and Derek. She had announced that she wanted to study art in college, and Derek had hit the roof. "Art?" he scoffed. "What kind of career is that? You'll never make a living as an artist." Sophia had stormed out of the room, tears streaming down her face. I had followed her, trying to comfort her, but she pushed me away. "You always take his side," she accused. "You never stand up for us." Her words had cut deep, but I knew she was right. I had been so focused on keeping the peace, on not rocking the boat, that I had lost sight of what really mattered, my children's happiness and well-being. As I sat there, lost in my memories, Aunt Grace placed a steaming cup of tea in front of me. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. I sighed, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. "I was just thinking about how things got so messed up," I confessed. "How did I let it get this bad?" Aunt Grace reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "It's not your fault, Eve. You've been dealing with a lot, and you've been doing the best you can." I shook my head. "But I should have seen it coming. I should have stood up for myself, for my kids." "It's never too late," Aunt Grace said, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "You know what they say, the best revenge is a life well lived." I couldn't help but smile at that. She was right. I couldn't change the past, but I could damn well fight for my future, for my children's future. I took a sip of my tea, feeling a newfound sense of determination. I was done being a doormat, done letting Derek and Martha walk all over me. It was time to take back control of my life, one step at a time. I returned home from Aunt Grace's restaurant, my newfound resolve burning bright within me. As I stepped through the front door, I heard Derek's voice coming from the living room. He was on the phone, his tone hushed and urgent. "Yes, I understand. I'll take care of it," he said, before quickly hanging up as he noticed my presence. "Who was that?" I asked, my suspicion piqued. "Just a client," he replied, his eyes darting away from mine. "Nothing important." I knew he was lying, but I decided to let it go for now. There were more pressing matters at hand. "We need to talk about the condo, Derek," I said, my voice steady and firm, "and about our savings. How could you make such a big decision without consulting me?" Derek's face hardened, his defensiveness kicking in. "I told you, Eve, it's just a little investment. Mother needs a place to live, and I want to make sure she's comfortable." "Comfortable?" I scoffed. "Derek, that condo is nicer than our own home. And what about our savings? We were supposed to use that money for our future, for our children's education." Before Derek could respond, the front door swung open and in walked Martha, a smug smile on her face. "What's all this commotion about?" she asked, feigning innocence. I turned to face her, my anger rising. "Martha, did you know about the condo? About Derek using our savings to pay for it?" Martha's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. "Of course I did, dear. Derek is just being a good son, looking out for his mother in her golden years." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The audacity of this woman to come into my home and undermine me at every turn. "This isn't about being a good son, Martha," I said, my voice shaking with barely contained rage. This is about respect and trust. Derek went behind my back, and you're enabling him." Martha's eyes narrowed, her true colors shining through. "Oh, please, Eve, don't be so dramatic. You should be grateful that Derek is such a devoted husband and son." I felt like I was going to explode. How dare she twist this around on me, making me out to be the unreasonable one? Grateful? I spat. For what? For being lied to? For having my opinions and feelings ignored? Derek stepped in, trying to defuse the situation. "Eve, calm down. Let's just talk about this rationally." But I was done being rational, done being the peacekeeper, the one who always had to compromise. "No, Derek, I'm done talking. I'm done being treated like a second-class citizen in my own home." I grabbed my purse and stormed out of the house, ignoring Derek's calls for me to come back. I got in my car and drove, my mind racing with the events of the past few days. Before I knew it, I found myself back at Aunt Grace's restaurant. She took one look at my face and ushered me into the back room, her concern evident. "What happened, Eve?" she asked, handing me a tissue. Through tears of frustration and anger, I told her about the confrontation with Derek and Martha, about how I felt so utterly betrayed and alone. Aunt Grace listened patiently, her hand resting on mine in a comforting gesture. When I finished, she looked me straight in the eye, her gaze fierce and determined. "Eve, you are not alone. You have me, and you have your children. We will get through this together." Her words were like a balm to my battered soul. For the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Hope that I could reclaim my life, my independence. "Thank you, Aunt Grace," I whispered, my voice hoarse with emotion. "I don't know what I would do without you." She smiled, her eyes twinkling with that familiar mischief. "You'd survive, Eve. You're stronger than you know, but I'm glad I can be here for you." As we sat there sipping tea and plotting our next move, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The road ahead would be tough, but with Aunt Grace by my side, I knew I could face anything, even the betrayal of those I once loved most. In the days following my confrontation with Derek and Martha, the tension at home was palpable. Martha's presence seemed to permeate every corner of the house, her manipulations growing more brazen with each passing day. She would corner me in the kitchen, demanding to know why I wasn't being more supportive of Derek's decision to buy her the condo. "After all he's done for this family, Eve, you should be grateful," she would say, her voice dripping with condescension. I tried to stand my ground, but it was exhausting. Every conversation felt like a battle, and I could feel myself growing weary. Luke and Sophia, bless their hearts, could sense the strain. They started spending more time at home, as if to create a buffer between me and the toxic duo of Derek and Martha. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, Martha made a snide comment about my cooking. "Really, Eve, I don't know how you manage to make even the simplest dishes so bland." I saw Sophia's eyes flash with anger, and before I could respond, she spoke up. "Grandma, that's not fair. Mom works hard to put food on the table for us every night." Martha scoffed, waving her hand dismissively. "Oh, please. It's not like she has a real job. Being a nurse is hardly rocket science." I felt my blood boil, but before I could say anything, Luke chimed in. "That's enough, Grandma. Mom's job is just as important as anyone else's, and she's damn good at it, too." The pride I felt in that moment was overwhelming. My children, standing up for me, defending me against the very people who were supposed to love and support us. Derek, as usual, remained silent, his eyes fixed on his plate. I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his shoulders hunched as if he were trying to disappear into himself. After dinner, as I was cleaning up the kitchen, Aunt Grace called. I stepped outside, grateful for the reprieve. "How are you holding up, Eve?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. I sighed, leaning against the porch railing. "It's tough, Aunt Grace. Martha is relentless, and Derek just sits there and lets her walk all over me." "I've been thinking," Aunt Grace said, her tone conspiratorial. "What if we came up with a plan to regain control, to show Derek and Martha that you're not just going to sit back and take their abuse?" I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. "What did you have in mind?" "Well, first things first, we need to secure your financial future. Start setting aside some money. Create a backup plan in case things go south with Derek." I nodded, my mind already racing with possibilities. "And then what?" "Then we start to push back. Subtly at first, but enough to let them know that you're not going to be their doormat anymore." I felt a smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. I liked the sound of that. We talked for a while longer, ironing out the details of our plan. By the time I hung up the phone, I felt a renewed sense of purpose, a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. The next morning, I woke up early and headed to the bank. I opened a new account in my name, transferring a portion of my paycheck into it. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As I drove to work, I felt a sense of empowerment wash over me. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was taking control of my life, my destiny. Martha and Derek may have thought they had me backed into a corner, but they had no idea what I was capable of. With Aunt Grace's help and the support of my children, I was ready to fight back. And fight back I would, no matter what it took. They had underestimated me for far too long, and now it was time to show them just how strong Evelyn Carter could be. With Aunt Grace's guidance, I began to redirect funds into my secret account, a little at a time so as not to raise suspicion. It was a delicate balancing act, trying to secure my financial future while still maintaining the facade of normalcy at home. Derek and Martha, however, seemed to sense that something was amiss. They started to question my every move, demanding to know where I was going and who I was talking to. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, Derek cornered me in the kitchen. "What's going on, Eve?" he asked, his voice low and accusatory. "You've been acting strange lately." I kept my back turned to him, focusing on chopping vegetables. "I don't know what you're talking about, Derek. I've just been busy with work and the kids," he scoffed, moving closer. "Don't lie to me, Eve. I know you're up to something." Before I could respond, Martha burst into the kitchen, her face twisted in a scowl. "What's this I hear about you undermining our authority, Eve?" she demanded. I felt my heart race, but I forced myself to remain calm. "I'm not undermining anything, Martha. I'm just trying to do what's best for my family." Martha's eyes narrowed, her voice dripping with venom. "Your family? This is my family, Eve, and you'd do well to remember that." I opened my mouth to retort, but Luke and Sophia chose that moment to enter the kitchen, their faces etched with concern. "What's going on?" Sophia asked, her eyes darting between me and Martha. Derek stepped forward, his voice smooth and reassuring. "Nothing, sweetheart, just a little misunderstanding." But Sophia wasn't buying it. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Mom, what's really going on?" I hesitated, torn between my desire to protect my children and my need for their support. But before I could speak, Martha interjected. "Your mother is just being difficult, as usual," she said, her tone dismissive. "Now why don't you two run along and let the adults handle this?" Luke's jaw clenched, his eyes flashing with anger. "No, Grandma. We're not going anywhere. If something's going on with Mom, we have a right to know." I felt a surge of pride and love for my children, their loyalty and strength shining through in that moment. Taking a deep breath, I turned to face Derek and Martha. "You want to know what's going on? Fine, I'll tell you." I proceeded to lay out everything, from the secret condo purchase to the depleted savings account. I told them about my plan to protect myself and my children, about the secret account I had been building with Aunt Grace's help. As I spoke, I could see the shock and anger on Derek's face, the indignation on Martha's. But I didn't back down, not this time. "I'm done being your doormat," I said, my voice steady and strong. "I'm done letting you walk all over me and my children. From now on, things are going to be different." Martha sputtered, her face turning an alarming shade of red. "How dare you?" she hissed. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us." But Derek remained silent, his eyes fixed on the floor. I could see the wheels turning in his head, the realization that he had pushed me too far. Sophia stepped forward, her hand slipping into mine. "I found something, Mom," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Documents in Dad's office. I think you need to see them." I felt a chill run down my spine, a sense of foreboding washing over me. But I nodded, squeezing Sophia's hand in reassurance. "Show me," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. As we left the kitchen, I could feel Derek and Martha's eyes boring into my back. But I didn't look back, not this time. Whatever those documents held, whatever secrets they revealed, I was ready to face them head on. With my children by my side and Aunt Grace in my corner, I knew I could handle anything, even the truth about the man I once loved. As I pored over the documents Sophia had found, my heart sank with each revelation. Bank statements, receipts, and emails painted a picture of a man I barely recognized, a man who had been lying to me for years. Derek had been siphoning money from our joint accounts, funneling it into secret investments and lavish gifts for his mother. The condo was just the tip of the iceberg. I felt a rage building inside me, a fury that threatened to consume me. But I knew I couldn't let it. Not yet. I had to be smart, had to play my cards right. I called Aunt Grace, my voice shaking as I relayed my discoveries. She listened patiently, her voice a soothing balm to my frayed nerves. "We'll make this right, Eve," she said, her tone resolute. "We'll make them pay for what they've done." Together, we hatched a plan to expose Derek and Martha's deceit, to bring their manipulations to light in front of everyone they held dear. I recruited Luke and Sophia, their eagerness to help a testament to their love and loyalty. We gathered evidence, compiled documents, and rehearsed our confrontation. The day of the family gathering arrived, a day I had been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. Derek's parents, siblings, and cousins filled our home, their laughter and chatter a stark contrast to the tension that thrummed beneath the surface. I watched as Derek and Martha worked the room, their smiles wide and their words honeyed. They were the picture of the perfect family, the doting son and the loving mother. But I knew the truth, and it was time everyone else did too. I clinked my glass, drawing the attention of the room. "I have something to say," I announced, my voice steady and clear. Derek's eyes narrowed, his smile faltering. "Eve, what are you doing?" I ignored him, turning to face the gathered crowd. For years I have been silent. I have endured lies, manipulations, and betrayals, all for the sake of this family. A murmur rippled through the room, confusion and curiosity etched on every face. "But no more," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "Today I am breaking my silence. Today I am exposing the truth about the man you all think you know." With that, I began to lay out the evidence. Bank statements, emails, receipts, each one a damning indictment of Derek's deceit. The room fell silent, the weight of my words hanging heavy in the air. I could see the shock on the faces of Derek's family, the disbelief and the anger. Derek's face was a mask of fury, his fists clenched at his sides. "Eve, stop this. You don't know what you're doing." But I did. I knew exactly what I was doing. "I know everything, Derek," I said, my voice cold and hard. "I know about the money, about the lies. I know about the way you've been manipulating this family for years." Martha stepped forward, her face twisted in a snarl. "You ungrateful wretch. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us?" But her words fell on deaf ears. The crowd had turned on them, their faces etched with disgust and betrayal. Derek's brother stepped forward, his voice shaking with anger. "Is this true, Derek? Have you been stealing from your own family?" Derek's silence was all the answer they needed. The room erupted in chaos, voices raised in anger and accusations flying. I watched as Derek's carefully crafted facade crumbled, as the truth of his actions was laid bare for all to see. And in that moment, I felt a sense of triumph, a sense of vindication. I had done it. I had exposed the lies, had brought the truth to light. But even as I reveled in my victory, I knew that the road ahead would not be easy. Derek and Martha would not go down without a fight, and I had to be ready. But with Luke and Sophia by my side, and Aunt Grace in my corner, I knew I could face whatever lay ahead. I was done being a victim, done being a pawn in their games. From now on, I was the one in control, and heaven help anyone who tried to stand in my way. In the aftermath of the family gathering, Derek was a man on a mission. He was determined to salvage his reputation, to paint me as the villain in this sordid tale. He called his family members, spinning tales of my supposed instability, my jealousy and paranoia. He even went so far as to suggest that I had fabricated the evidence, that I was simply out to destroy him. But his words fell on deaf ears. The truth was out there, and no amount of smooth talking could erase the facts. Martha, too, tried her hand at manipulation. She cornered Luke and Sophia, attempting to poison them against me with her honeyed words and crocodile tears. "Your mother is just confused, darlings," she cooed, her voice dripping with false concern. "She doesn't understand the sacrifices your father has made for this family." But Luke and Sophia were not so easily swayed. They had seen the evidence, had heard the truth from my own lips. They stood firm in their support of me, their loyalty unwavering. As the days turned into weeks, I watched as Derek and Martha's influence waned. Their once tight grip on the family was slipping, their power diminishing with each passing day. I knew that it was time for me to make my move, to seize control of my own destiny once and for all. I called Aunt Grace, my voice trembling with a mix of excitement and trepidation. "I'm ready," I said, my words heavy with meaning. She understood immediately, her voice warm with pride. "I knew you would be, Eve. You're stronger than you know." Together we began to plan for my new beginning. We pored over budgets and bank statements, mapping out a path to financial independence. I started squirreling away money, building a nest egg that would allow me to start fresh, free from Derek's control. I even began to look at apartments, dreaming of a space that would be all my own. But even as I planned for my future, I knew that I couldn't do it alone. I needed my children by my side, needed their love and support to carry me through. I sat them down one evening, my heart in my throat as I explained my plans. I told them of my desire to start over, to build a life that was free from the toxicity and manipulation that had plagued us for so long. To my surprise and relief, they were fully on board. Luke and Sophia pledged their support, their eyes shining with pride and determination. "We're with you, Mom," Sophia said, her voice fierce with conviction. "Every step of the way." Luke nodded, his jaw set with resolve. "We'll make this work, Mom. We'll build a new life, a better life." I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, my heart swelling with love and gratitude. I had always known that my children were my greatest blessing, but in that moment I realized just how truly lucky I was. As the weeks turned into months, I watched as my plan began to take shape. I found a small but cozy apartment, signed a lease, and began to pack up my belongings. Derek and Martha, of course, tried to stop me. They threatened and cajoled, pleaded and demanded, but I held firm, my resolve unshakable. "I'm done, Derek," I said, my voice calm and steady. "I'm done with the lies, the manipulation, the deceit. I'm ready to start over, to build a life that is truly my own." He stared at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. "You can't do this, Eve. You need me. You need us." But I shook my head, a small smile playing at the corners of my lips. "No, Derek, I don't need you. I never did." And with that, I walked out the door, my head held high and my heart full of hope. I knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that there would be challenges and obstacles to overcome. But I also knew that I was ready, that I was strong enough to face whatever lay ahead. With my children by my side and Aunt Grace in my corner, I knew that I could do anything. I was ready to start my new beginning, to build a life that was truly my own. And nothing, not even the ghosts of my past, could stop me now. Months had passed since I walked out of my old life and into my new beginning. The journey had been challenging, filled with ups and downs, but I had emerged stronger, more resilient than ever before. With the help of Aunt Grace and my children, I had built a life that was truly my own. I was financially stable, emotionally grounded, and surrounded by love and support. My new apartment had become a haven, a place where I could be myself without fear of judgment or manipulation. Luke and Sophia visited often, filling the space with laughter and warmth. We would gather around the kitchen table, sharing meals and stories, making new memories to replace the painful ones of the past. Aunt Grace would join us, her presence a constant reminder of the love and strength that had carried me through my darkest days. Even my work had taken on new meaning. I threw myself into my nursing career, finding fulfillment in the care and compassion I could offer to my patients. It was a reminder that I had value, that I could make a difference in the world. As for Derek and Martha, they had become distant figures in our lives. Derek had moved out of the family home, taking up residence in the very condo he had bought for his mother. Martha, too, had retreated, her once formidable presence diminished in the wake of the scandal. I heard whispers of their attempts to rebuild their reputations, to paint themselves as the victims in this sordid tale. But I paid them no mind. I had learned the hard way that their words were nothing more than empty promises, their actions driven by selfish desires. Instead, I focused on my own growth, on the relationships that truly mattered. Aunt Grace's restaurant had become a second home, a place where I could always find a listening ear and a warm meal. We would sit together in the quiet hours after closing, sipping tea and talking about everything and nothing. She would offer advice and encouragement, her wisdom a guiding light in my journey of self-discovery. And then there were my children. my pride and joy. Luke had finally found the courage to pursue his music, his passion and talent shining through in every note he played. Sophia, too, had blossomed, her once rebellious spirit channeled into a fierce determination to succeed on her own terms. Together we were building a new legacy, one based on love, honesty, and mutual respect. We were a family, not by blood, but by choice, bound together by the unbreakable bonds of shared experience and unwavering support. As I sat in my cozy living room, surrounded by the warmth and laughter of my loved ones, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought me to this moment. It had been a long and winding road, filled with pain and heartache, but also with moments of joy and triumph. I had learned that true strength came from within, that I was capable of overcoming even the darkest of challenges. I had learned that family was not defined by blood, but by the love and loyalty we showed one another. And most importantly, I had learned that happiness was not something that could be given or taken away by others. It was something that I had to create for myself through the choices I made and the people I surrounded myself with. As I looked around at the faces of my loved ones, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I knew that there would be more challenges ahead, more obstacles to overcome. But I also knew that I was ready, that I had the strength and the support to face whatever lay ahead. I was Evelyn Carter, a survivor, a fighter, a woman who had risen from the ashes of betrayal and manipulation to build a life that was truly her own. And nothing, not even the ghosts of my past, could take that away from me.